Calling to order the Monday, December 17th, 2018 regular meeting of the 37th Council of the City of Berkeley. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Blanchard.
Here.
Councilmember Dean.
Here.
Councilmember Gavin.
Here.
Councilmember Hennon.
Here.
Councilmember Stedman.
Here.
And Mayor Turbrack.
Here. First order of business today is the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Motion approved by Councilmember Hennon.
Support.
Support by Mayor Pro Tem Baker. Any changes or additions? Seeing none, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennon.
Yes.
Stedman.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Tonight's agenda has been approved. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge. With us today is Pastor Zach Dunlap.
Let's pray. Good and loving God, you are not far from any one of us. You have drawn near. Thank you for your presence with us and for all the gifts this season brings, for the joy of working, shopping, eating, living, worshiping, and serving in this wonderful community of Berkeley. We are truly thankful. Help us to love one another even when we don't see eye to eye. Grant us wisdom as we seek to set policies for the good of all. Be especially with those for whom this holiday season brings feelings of loneliness, grief, loss, or despair. Grant us your hope. And just as children are often filled with wonder, fill all of us, people of different faiths and no faith at all, with an abiding wonder that extends beyond Christmas and carries us into the new year. Bring out the best in us, God, as we seek to bring out the best in ourselves, in one another, and in the wider community. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Please turn the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have now reached the citizens' comments portion of our meeting. You may present your thoughts on issues that are not included on tonight's agenda. Council members will not engage you in discussion, but if your concern does need to be addressed by a member of city staff or department of the city, please sign your name on the sheet provided on the clerk's desk. Again, you may speak on a specific agenda item while it is being considered, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name and city of residence.
Good evening. My name is Dan Mihaescu. I reside here in Berkeley, and I'm the chairman of the Berkeley Beautification Advisory Committee. And this evening, we're going to go through and recognize the homeowners that did an outstanding job in decorating their homes for this holiday season. First of all, I do want to thank every homeowner for doing their part to brighten the dark nights of winter. The nights are long, the days are short, so we do appreciate that. But the people we're recognizing here today are those that have actually done an outstanding job, and it was very difficult. We began with a full canvas of the city, which took approximately 3 to 4 hours. We took photos of 120 homes and eventually winnowed it down to the 17, which you will see here this evening. I'm going to move the podium so I can do this presentation. So rather than narrate for each of the homes, I'm just going to allow everybody to just enjoy the images. I might highlight a few things. This first home here is 2617 Phillips. They were a winner a few years ago. This is the first year that we're actually awarding or recognizing homes for a second time. So they were one of our first winners, and we welcome them back. This is another image here showing the home, as many of you might be seeing it, from Catalpa. So the following two homes are actually directly across from one another. You have 1616 Wiltshire and then 1615. So hopefully it's a friendly rivalry that they have. This home here is on Harvard. And it's interesting to see as the years progress, we have different types and different things that people can do. And so a lot of these inflatables are making their way into people's yards. And we appreciate that. This is 2118 Dorothea. And obviously it's difficult to select these winners, but oftentimes we look at them and we kind of make it's subjective, but it's a sense of would you feel welcome there for a holiday party or a celebration. And a lot of these homes are very welcoming in the way they do their decorations. This is 2800 Kenmore. This home here is at 2740 Griffith. You can see they did their garage as well. 3162 Bacon. All these images will be uploaded to our website on Facebook for those of you that want to see them again. This is 4191 Elwood. And a lot of these homes actually look much better live or in person. So perhaps you may all use this as an opportunity to enjoy these lights before they're put away for the springtime. This is 3540 Cummings. This here is 4252 Prairie. 4039 Kenmore. And for those of you here wondering, you're probably like, when did this person take a photo of my home? This is 3665 Buckingham. 2343 Phillips. This was also previous year's winner. 2814 Mortensen. And this one here, the snowflakes on the house actually pulsate and light. So those look really nice when you see them live. 1239 Cambridge. 3973 Phillips. Thank you very much. So with that being said, again, we appreciate all that these homeowners have done. So for those of you that have actually made the trip out tonight, please come forward. The city council would love to shake your hand. The mayor would love to shake your hand. I'd love to shake your hand and congratulate you, and thank you again.
Yes.
Thank you. You look so nice. Everything looks great. You do. Great job. Awesome. Congratulations. Hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you, my kid. Great job. Thank you so much.
Good job. Awesome job.
Love the dedication. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
We meet again.
Well deserved.
Great job, Janice.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Look at you going all out.
All your hard work.
Carrying the festive spirit right in here. I like it.
Great job. Great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful job. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Oh, I know, believe me, I saw it right away. I knew which one it was.
Thank you so much.
I know. I know, I saw it right away. I knew where we were talking.
Cleaned out the audience pretty good there.
So nice.
There's more waiting. I wonder there's a second wait.
We're waiting in the wings to get in, I think.
Definitely puts mine to shame.
Yeah, ditto. At my porch light.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
That's great.
Dan, can you put the podium back, please? Oh, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Dan,
Thank you.
and the committee for everything. Awesome. Go ahead,
Good
Kevin.
evening.
Yep.
Kevin McNulty, 1975 Royal Avenue. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you. Perhaps we should add that DTE thanks them too. What we need is a comprehensive, coordinated plan. We want young people to move into Berkeley, young families. Our excellent schools encourage that already. And we want Berkeley to be more walkable. But where are people going to walk from? Can these young families afford the $450,000 new construction we have in Berkeley? Well, an apartment development would provide an affordable option. And the larger the development, the larger the budget. And a large budget could afford a requirement, like a requirement, build a catch basin under the parking lot, a huge catch basin to collect rainwater and slowly drain it into our overworked sewers. That would solve two different kinds of problems we have at one time. And 12 Mile Road would be most appropriate for a road diet. There are walkable businesses there. We are not going to entice new business where there are no vacancies to move into. But you put a red light in front of sweet endings, their business is going to boom, you know. I don't know anybody that's going to pass by. And on behalf of my fellow neighbors, we'd like to thank Councilman Gavin and Councilwoman Stedman for their help and his visit on Saturday personally inspecting. Happy holidays.
Thanks, Kevin. Any additional citizens' comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our regular order of business. Ms. Boucher, would you please read the items on tonight's consent agenda?
Approval of the minutes, matter of approving the minutes of the 37th City Council meeting on Monday, December 3rd, 2018, and warrant, matter of approving warrant number 1333.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Gavin with support from Councilmember Blanchard. Any corrections or additions? Seeing none, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennan,
Yes.
Stedman,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard,
Yes.
and Turbrack.
Yes. Tonight's consent agenda has passed. We now move on to the regular agenda. Ms. Boucher, would you please read item number 1 on tonight's regular agenda?
Recognitions, presentations, might have any recognitions or presentations from the consent agenda.
Seeing no recognitions or presentations, we'll move on to item number 2, please.
Motion number M8518, matter of approving special land use approval SU 0218 to Michigan State University Federal Credit Union, who is proposing to use the property at 3165 12 Mile Road as a bank in the downtown district.
Is there a motion to approve M8518?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember
Support.
Stedman with support from Councilmember Dean. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item comes to us by way of Planning Commission, who handled the initial steps of the special land use process. Included in your packet is a overview by the city's Community Development Director, Tim McLean, as well as application materials found for the proposed temporary use, as well as a draft set of minutes from the Planning Commission meeting dated 12/11/18, where they made their recommendation to this body. So essentially, the MSU Credit Union is going to be new to our community. They are in the process of developing their branch on Coolidge. In the meantime, they'd like to open up a little bit earlier and find a temporary location here on 12 Mile. They formerly had an ATM there that was, as you see, I think it's reflected in the minutes, was installed prior to receiving special land use approval. Now they're talking about installing sort of a temporary branch where people can actually go in and do some of their banking here in the city of Berkeley. Because of this particular use, the DDA district makes the zoning district allows for this, but only under the purview of a special land use, which means it has a sort of a dual permission role where the planning commission as well as the city council both look at this. And much of this is outlined in your packet as well. I believe Mr. McLean is here to answer any questions that the city council may have.
Anything to add, Mr. McLean?
The applicant is currently in the process of obtaining the demo permit for their new build. So this is going to be a temporary location, if approved this evening. They'd be looking to move out in a year, maybe a little bit more, depending on how quickly they can get the new build constructed.
The Planning Commission approved with conditions.
Yes, sir.
You want to go through those quickly for council and the residents?
Yes, the Planning Commission attached the condition that the ATM be removed. They attached a time frame of 2 years. We don't believe that the applicant will be at that location for 2 years. However, the reasoning for that was so that when the applicant moves out of that location, they will remove the ATM and restore the window on the front facade. Adding the ATM did lower the percentage of windows on the front facade, and so that was that condition requires them to restore it to the way it was, and in accordance with the minimum design standards for the downtown district.
Any additional restrictions or anything that came up?
That was it on the. Yeah, it was just it for the window.
Okay.
There's going to be minimal impact of this location. They'll do a little bit of work on the inside. They'll add new signage and some lighting for the signage, but no drive-through. Like I said, minimal impact.
Okay. Questions from council for Mr. McLean? Councilmember Henn?
I guess this is more of a procedural question. The motion before us right now, does it include the conditions? Are we considering the conditions, or would we need to add that on to the motion?
If it is council's desire to continue or to incorporate the planning commission conditions, which I assume is your inclination, we should specifically say so in the council's motion.
Councilmember Stedman, Councilmember Dean, do you have a problem with that being added
No,
to the
no
motion?
problem. Not at all.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. Additional questions, comments on this?
I have a question about the signage and the lighting. Will they be in accordance with the current design guidelines that the DDA has worked so diligently on?
Yep. The Planning Commission did ask if it was possible for the applicant to have more decorative lighting, and that's a accommodation they are willing to make.
Okay, thank you.
Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Do you have anything? Thank you for coming, first of all. Anything you want to add, anything we missed or left out here?
It's just that this is a temporary location.
Right.
And we are in the process of selecting a new light fixture to go in as the Planning Commission has suggested. And we're looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you for being here as well. Additional questions? Any other questions or comments from council before we?
I guess just officially your name for the record and all that good stuff. Yeah.
Scott Maynard, Newman Smith Architecture. We're the architect of record for the credit union.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stedman, and then.
Do you have any idea how long you're going to be, or before you'll be finished with your branch on Coolidge?
Currently, we're anticipating a probably around an August, September opening.
Okay, thank you.
That's our current schedule.
Thank you.
Yep, excuse me.
Hi, Wendy Zabramski, Berkeley. I would like to declare that a public hearing was not held on this the way it is supposed to be. If you look in your packet, there is minutes from both 11:18 and 12:18 and 11:27. 11:27 was supposed to be a public hearing. I personally live close enough, I received a postcard. I went to the city a couple days before, maybe the day before the meeting, and asked to see the complete application. I was given one sheet of paper, just the top paper, not a complete application. I wrote a letter and took it the next day, and they still did not have a complete application. My letter is left out of your packet, which was attached to these minutes. Because that public hearing says it started and stopped, but I had not seen any complete application, that was not really a public hearing. And then when they continued on 12:18, there was no notification of a public hearing. So I don't believe it was done correctly. I know that the ATM was put in illegally, going to be snuck through, was taken out not till last Friday. They just did this all backwards, and I'm not sure if it's because Tim McLean tried to do this internally and then realized it needed to go to Planning Commission, which I see as a whole problem. I don't think internal is working right now to be able to handle these things. The same was with Tootie and Tallulah's and that the transmission shop that's being converted into a hair salon. They're taking on things that needed to go to Planning Commission. Planning Commission even said this at the last meeting. I'm very concerned. This was not done right. We have not had a public hearing on this where people within so many feet have been notified and been able to review the complete application.
Okay.
Make sure I don't have anything else because I wrote notes. And I also was concerned about the parking. It's saying they need 6 additional parking spaces, and this may be what code is, but this needs to be looked into. According to Tim, as long as they were within 500 feet of the municipal parking lot, everything's okay. However, there's many, many businesses that use that. How are they measured? Like, where is the limit? Okay, we have 10 businesses, and we have 20 spots for municipal parking spots. How are they looked at? You know, okay, we're going to add 6. I live where they already go into the residential area, okay? So it does concern me, and it does affect me personally. I had a situation where I had guests over Saturday afternoon, and there was no place for them to park. It's not fair. I live in the residential where there's lots of parking only on one side of the street because of a fire lane, but I can't even have guests over because they're taken up by businesses along there. It's not fair. The business district or the residential district should be able to have parking. And the next thing I guess I have to ask for is permit parking. I don't know. It's just not fair. You know, I've mentioned over and over again about Amici's and the situation there. You know, that place has 2 of their own parking spots, and there's 10 municipal. Okay, you know, well over 10 people use that, and everybody else has their own spots marked because they are individually owned. They go out on the street. My street, Tyler, Griffith, just bringing it aware. And, you know, the DDA director would like to reduce parking requirements. It's not fair. Thank you.
Hey, Wendy. Questions, council? Additional discussion points on this? Mr. Staron, is there anything that we need to be concerned with moving forward?
Not that I'm aware of, but I would be interested in what Mr. McLean has to say in response. I was not aware of any suggestion that this was procedurally improper.
Mr. McLean?
The public hearing was held in accordance with all statutory requirements. All affected property owners within 300 feet of the property were notified of the public hearing. The public hearing was held at the November 27 meeting of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission at that time postponed action on the special land use due to they wanted to see a more detailed site plan with the ATM being installed improperly, which that was a code violation. They received a violation notice, and we communicated with the applicant, let them know that they had to come out of there. And as of, I believe it was 2 Fridays ago, that ATM was removed.
Okay. And that was noted in our report. Councilmember Dean?
I just have a question. How were the residents notified of the public hearing?
Yes, what we do is we send out a postcard. It's a good portion of the public notice that gets put in the newspaper.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions, comments from council? No? Seeing none, we obviously have a couple things we're going to look at, but based on what we have here, it does appear that public hearing was held appropriately. So I'm going to ask Ms. Boucher to call the roll.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennan?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
Yes. Ms. Boucher, would you please call item number 3 on tonight's agenda, or read item number 3, please?
Resolution number R3918, matter of considering a resolution of support for a lane reduction on Coolidge Highway.
Is there a motion to approve R3918?
Motion to approve.
Motion to support. Motion approved by Mayor Pro Tem Baker with support from Councilmember Dean. Mr. Baumgarten, I understand you will be giving a presentation.
Yes, sir. I've prepared some items for council.
Okay.
With your permission, Mr. Mayor, I'll present from down here. I might follow Dan's lead and move this off to the side as well. Okay.
Can I do one of the light things there too, sir? Thank you. Perfect.
Specific to the resolution, I want to go over a couple items with you. First, I want to clarify intent here this evening. Specifically, the agenda reads the matter of considering. I want to point out that it's not a matter of approving this evening. So what we're asking the City Council to do is to consider language for resolution of support. The resolution in the packet will be updated based on the discussion, and it will return to City Council at a future meeting as soon as administration can satisfy any items that are discussed here this evening. The purpose of that resolution is as such. The DDA is considered as a funding entity for the proposed Coolidge lane reduction or reconfiguration, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But Coolidge Highway ultimately falls under the jurisdiction of the City of Berkeley, so they're not able to move forward on funding a project to do anything without the City Council's show of support for this and essentially the City Council's permission. So a final version of this resolution will allow the DDA to actually proceed with going out to bid and publishing an RFP, which will hopefully gather a bunch of contractors and vendors who are willing to do this kind of work. There'll be an audit process, both with administration as well as with DDA, and they'll hopefully whittle it down to a single vendor who then, whose proposal will come back before both the DDA board as well as the City Council. And so that is the purpose. That's why we're discussing this evening. This will allow the DDA to move forward in again being the funding mechanism, and then also seeking a vendor for the proposed changes. I want to give a project overview of what we've been discussing. I know we've had, as indicated in the first version of the resolution, we have had a number of public outreach opportunities for this, but As you notice, the terms sort of evolve. We've got a couple of different names for this particular item, but I want to clarify that whether it's being referred to as a lane reduction, or road diet, a restriping, a reconfiguration, or a 4-to-3 conversion, we're still talking about the same project here, and it's the one that's been consistently discussed throughout. So all these terms do apply to the proposal, and they've been sort of used interchangeably depending on what whomever's talking's favorite term is. I personally don't like anything with the word diet in it. So we've been, kind of referring to this as different things throughout. And you'll see the words like restriping and configuration and 4-to-3 come up pretty frequently. So the project overview, what we're talking about doing is, well, let me start. So what we're talking about doing is having an evaluation of actually taking the existing striping on Coolidge and changing it so it does not have 2 northbound and southbound travel lanes, and then parking very, very close to the travel lanes, but in fact, having a single center turn lane that's continuous all the way from 11 to 12 mile. It would have 1 northbound and 1 southbound travel lane. There'd be an area for bikers as well on Coolidge, and then expanded parking areas as well. So a full overview, what we'd be doing here is first, in order to get to sort of the end of this evaluation period, there are about 5 or 6 steps that are going to occur within that 1 year. And that would be take a baseline measurements. So what you have here, featured here, is the green line there is Coolidge. Coolidge, we're all very familiar with Coolidge. The blue lines actually indicate streets that are near to and will likely be taking the overflow from the Coolidge traffic if they become dissatisfied with whatever conditions they find on Coolidge. We see this now, unfortunately, at some of our rush hour periods. Moving, let's see, left to right here, the continuous line is Kipling. Kipling is the first north-south, continuous north-south road. As of right now, I think anecdotally we've heard from residents along there that say that they feel that they are one of the main alternate thoroughfares to Coolidge, whether it be neighbors coming home at the end of the day or people trying to avoid Coolidge altogether because they're not liking whatever they're finding there. Also under considerations, I think baseline studies need to be taken along Kenmore as well, which is your next immediate road north of Catalpa, and it runs all the way to 12 Mile. On the other side, you'll see the next available road is Beverly. It doesn't go all the way through. There's breaks in place for the high school, both north and south of Catalpa. And so those are going to be your next available option. Your next street is quite a distance away from Coolidge. We can look at actually expanding our studies there as well if we see fit. But again, it is quite a distance away. And so, but these 3, I think, should be absolutely standard for taking a baseline study. This would happen after consumers wraps their work, but before we talk about doing even the slightest restriping, and ideally these should happen during the school year. So if consumers is on course to finish up their work by January, we should be looking at taking some of these baseline measurements in February. And so, at any point, feel free, of course, jump in. And I also have Colleen from HRC, who's been working with the DDA and the city on putting these items together. So, but these are again, our absolute minimums. We could look at expanding these out if we need to, or if we want to get better data from these. Not only would we be doing traffic volumes, but also speeds. We're in the process right now of we're waiting to receive delivery on a couple of speed devices. Like you see, that Huntington Woods has trailers. We ordered, as we talked about during the budget sessions, 2 pole-mounted speed speedometers. And so these are the ones, as you drive past them, they'll actually blink to tell you what speed you did. The nice part about the ones that we've ordered is they actually are logging and collecting data. So not only will we have the tubes on the ground, but we also have the ability to capture speeds and with these devices as well. So we're in a good position to just begin the process of gathering baseline data before, like I said, we even make one single change to the repainting here. So steps 2 and 3 of this project will be to actually grind off the current lanes painted on Coolidge. And again, we're just talking about paint here. So grind those off, and then would repaint based on the configuration that we've been discussing here. Again, you've got a single turn lane that runs continuously between the two, a travel lane in both north and south, an area for bicycles, and then expanded parking bays as well. So you'd be grinding one set of lines off and then adding another one on there. The numbers are a little bit small to read, but they're available on the city's and on the DDA's website as well. You can actually see the measurements of what we're talking about. Sir?
Thanks. Just appreciate the visual there. Just want to indicate this isn't to scale, right? Because the actual space for bicycles is far wider than what the image might appear. So that's it's illustrative for effect. If you could read the measurements, you'd see that there's a lot more room between the parking and the bicycles and things than this image might entail. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's why when you're actually looking at the image on a different format, you'll see the feet are actually laid out for you. So you're absolutely right. It's not to scale, but the distances that are charted there are accurate for what we're talking about.
Right. The numbers, not the pictures. Okay.
Right. Numbers, not the pictures. That's a very concise way to put it. Thank you, sir. It's important to note that this is curb to curb. We're talking about the exact same width that we have now. So we're not changing any bit of concrete. Nothing's being demoed. Nothing's being added. Really, for the evaluation period, what's being proposed is just a change in the painted lines. Let's see. So you see a little bit of what we're talking about here. This is with the proposal overlaid over the existing conditions. So this is as indicated. This starts with 12 mile, and one of the things you'll notice right away is if there's one thing that we saw is with the consumers' work that happened throughout November. You really don't want to mess with an intersection, and so this actually keeps, for the most part, the intersection exactly the way it is. It is a turn lane. There are 2 through lanes, north and south there. And then, again, it's really going to function much in the same way that it does now. You'll see that we don't actually begin the road diet or the reconfiguration of the restriping, again, interchangeable terms until you get south of 12 mile. And you'll see there's an area, anywhere you see green is actually, the proposal is to use green paint to create driver awareness that to be other users of the road. And that as you see it start to narrow it down, it's very bright, it'll be fluorescent. I think many of us have seen sort of these painted green bike areas. Green is a dedicated color to this function, so it's meant to create awareness that as soon as you see that, you would say, okay, there's other users of the road here, there's bikers that are gonna be around, I need to be very careful. And then you see kind of the configuration cross-section there of what we'd be talking about. And that's really, it sort of narrows into the bulk of the stretch there until you get down to Catalpa. And at Catalpa, you've got a little bit different situation here than what you currently see, but there are pedestrian amenities there that we think are going to make a safer intersection. There are pedestrian lighting. This is a big intersection for high school students. It's one of the main crossings there as they travel back and forward between on Catalpa on either side of Coolidge. And so we want to be absolutely certain that we're bringing as much awareness to that intersection as possible, given all the different users that are going to be making use of Coolidge at that point. And then finally, calling out specifically the intersection at 11 mile. And so this, once again, you see where it widens out. And it goes back to being basically a cross-section similar to what we have now. There are dedicated turn lanes. There is, on the south side there, we're making, so you start to peel off a lane. On the south side, that's going to be dedicated right turn only. And so on the north side, head north, you'll see that it does have, remains one lane. Southbound, you'll see that it does open up to 2 lanes just south of 11 mile. And so I don't know if there's anything.
It actually opens up north of 11 mile.
Okay.
Just, the green paint shows the transition between the bike lane and where we're directing the bikes back to the sidewalk or to, off of the roadway into a shared configuration, but we're also opening that intersection up so that you have 2 through lanes southbound as it is today for that intersection.
So steps 4 and 5 in this would be throughout the entire 1-year evaluation period, we would be measuring quite a bit of data here. We would want traffic volumes, speeds, travel time between from 11 mile to 12 mile. Want to make sure that we're measuring pedestrian safety. Want to make sure we're gathering feedback from the business community. Basically, we want to make sure that we have enough data that by the end of the year, we can tell whether or not we have a satisfactory or an unsatisfactory project here. If we do find that we did not meet expectations, if the data yields an unsatisfactory return, then the DDA again would be the funding agency for returning the road to its current condition now, minus a bunch of consumers' trucks up and down the street.
Do those measurements take into account traffic accidents, incidents on?
Yes. Traffic accidents they're tracked anyway.
Right.
SEMCOG does that throughout the area, but it will absolutely be a part of this, both traveling vehicles, parked vehicles, and if we end up with pedestrian accidents as well.
Another question. Thank you for the additional detail about how we'd get some of this data. Would we also be amenable to other forms of input from residents and businesses, whether it's some online form or survey, another town hall, a couple of things like that, to provide other ways for folks to express their thoughts on the project in addition to the numbers themselves?
Yes, sir. Yep. We again, we want to make sure that we're checking in with people throughout. There will likely be the first period where we first do this. That's there's an adjustment period, and so we think that by the time we get to a 1-year mark, it'll be plenty of time, plenty of data in hand to make that adjustment. Plenty of feedback we have from residents as well. So if it does come down to I didn't like it at first, I don't like it now, or I didn't like it at first, but things calmed down, we would gather any and all bits of feedback we can on this. And so again, the DDA has discussed making a dedicated effort to gathering feedback.
Thanks. And one other quick question. What and this might be covered later, what other kind of mechanisms could we, on the city side, use to help raise awareness that this might be coming? If this were to move forward, could we put something in the buzz? Could we put something in the water bill inserts? Are there other ways to reach the residents before it happens so folks can see what's happening?
There is, yes. We thankfully this has been covered pretty well on social media. This has been covered pretty well by some of our local newspapers. We want to do a couple forays into videos and run them on YouTube, run them on the city's cable station. We're trying to get as much information about this as possible. If it's allowed to move forward, there will be a period between actually making approving a resolution of support and before the first bit of paint goes down, before the first bit of orange barrels go down. And so making sure people are aware of what's going on, where we're at in the process, that the baseline studies are actually occurring, what some of that data looks like. It's paramount that we end up doing all of that. And so one of the things that we did prior to the November open house was to actually mail hard copy flyers to all residents within the first, I think we went at least 2 blocks deep. We got pretty good response at that open meeting. So those are going to be your most likely users. Those are the ones that aren't likely to go to a different side street to do their business. They're going to come to Coolidge to either head north or south or hopefully do a little bit of shopping as well. Those are going to be your most frequent users, and we want to make sure that they're absolutely keyed into what's going on.
Thank you.
I want to make a point here. Funding on this project has come up a couple of times. I do want to point out specifically that the grinding and restriping are all funded through the Downtown Development Authority. Volume counts, traffic studies, and the like will be conducted through TIA. The city has an existing membership and has for years with TIA. They're a great resource, so we don't actually have to go out and find any new contractors, select any new vendors for that portion. We do already have on hand a group that's willing to do this. The city has been a long-term member of TIA probably since their founding area there. That is funded through, they take 1/2 of 1% of our Act 51 dollars, but still not a taxpayer-funded item. That's actually monies that we get from the state of Michigan to make road improvements. So again, as we mentioned before, if the matrices or if the metrics do any expectations, DDA would also be responsible for funding the return to existing conditions. So it's not just on the front end, and then if it doesn't work, the city's stuck holding the bucket. The DDA will be responsible for returning it to existing conditions as well. It would not utilize any taxpayer dollars. I want to go through some of the goals on this as well. And so here, what we've set out for this when starting to develop some of these plans and these projects, and what has been the theme going back, it looks like a couple of decades, well before I joined the city, a couple of decades on what our goals are here. On the first and foremost would be increased safety, whether that be driver or pedestrian safety. On the driver's side, what we're able to do with this configuration is to eliminate the lane shifts that are kind of troublesome on Coolidge, where you're weaving in and out based on where the turn lanes are. We also decrease side and rear traffic crashes. So you have the layout here. You'll see all the different potential areas of impact that come with the city's existing conditions here. So what we see is a lot of side swipes and rear end accidents on Coolidge now. I think there are some in the audience that can attest to how often they see rear end traffic accidents happen right in front of their businesses. What you do with the proposed configuration, and this doesn't go as far as the parking areas, this is specific to the travel lanes, you're minimizing the areas where you have points of impact here. So you're taking them down, you're essentially cutting them in half. You're taking them down from 6 potential areas of impact down to about 3. Which, again, we remain excited for the lower crash reduction. So, again, this is one of the goals we hope to see at the end of the evaluation period. Traffic flows as well. We want to be able to increase the flow of traffic. It may seem on its surface counterintuitive that you take out the number of traffic lanes and travel lanes and you see better flow of traffic. So again, this is why we have an evaluation period. You'll see a little diagram of the way things are versus the proposal here. The cars here that have the little flashing icons here are cars that are stopped in the travel lane waiting to turn but cannot because there's opposing traffic here. So in this scenario, a 4-lane street is functioning as a 2-lane street because this becomes a double turn lane essentially, which again, you see these things back up. I know I see this each day when I'm utilizing Coolidge as well, especially during rush hours where both sides are heavy traffic. Under a 3-lane configuration, you'll see that those vehicles exit the travel lanes into a dedicated and continuous turn lanes, and this remains functioning here. So you don't have that start and stop effect that we have with what we see with the 4-lane configuration now. So you see less stoppages in the travel lanes themselves, and you see more opportunity for vehicles turning. They get out of the rest of our way as we're just trying to head north and south. Emergency vehicles as well. So one of the things that we would not be moving forward on this at all, or even really having this discussion, if we thought it was going to be a hindrance to the movement of emergency vehicles. Us, with Coolidge being a direct route to Beaumont being a life-saving building, we want to make sure that emergency vehicles are able to get to where they need to go as quickly and, most importantly, as safely as possible. So in this scenario, what you see in a 4-lane configuration is that vehicles, great drivers, they're aware, they scramble to try to get out of the way as best as they can. They're moving, but they're stacked up. And what we want to try to avoid is an emergency vehicle actually having to cross over into what would be oncoming traffic in order to get around slowdowns of people that cannot get out of the way otherwise. What's been observed and seen and modeled appropriately is that if there's a continuous turn lane, cars are able to exit the turn lane, thereby opening up a direct route, facilitating safer movements and hopefully faster movements for emergency vehicles. This would be one of those data points. We would be discussing too the experience of both the city's own public safety department as well as our ambulance service as well as Beaumont. So and the DDA and the city have both reached out and discussed this with Beaumont, and they're open to. They didn't say they don't have any concerns about this. They've seen this work in other places. They're not opposed to this in any way. So let's see, and then pedestrian safety. As we know, we've had some issues with pedestrians, especially in our crosswalks. So under a 4-lane configuration, and it's not shown up here, under a 4-lane configuration, when you cross 4 lanes of traffic, you can make it across any number of roads. But what you do is when you have two lanes stacked next to each other, there's a blind spot that develops between the interior and the exterior lane. We saw this with now two students that have been struck in crosswalks, and both scenarios. In both scenarios, one car created a blind spot for the other. So the pedestrian was not able to see the vehicle in the exterior lane, only the one in the interior, and the vice versa was true. And so if there's a single travel lane in either direction, you actually end up with the safer pedestrian movements when utilizing the crosswalk, because a pedestrian can see all vehicles utilizing the travel lane and the turn lane, and pedestrian can see them, they can see the pedestrian. So you end up with safer movements there as well. The biggest thing we would like to do is try to remove those blind spots. It happens not just at the mid-block crossings that we've installed in the last year or so, but we see this happen at times on the intersection crosswalks as well. So again, in all measures, we would like to try to see those reduced as much as possible. So that's kind of a quick overview. So why are we talking about a one-year evaluation period? Why is this coming up now? So we need to make sure the project is, of course, meeting its goals. Instead of jumping 2 feet in and just start ripping up curves and tearing things up, it's most appropriate to say, does this work for Berkley? Does this work for Coolidge? Does this work specifically for Coolidge between 11 and 12 mile? There are a number of things that could very well be unique to this project and on our particular stretch of road. So some of the questions that we'll have throughout this and that we'll be utilizing data to try to answer is, will there be an increased congestion outside of rush hour? No matter how many lanes you have, morning and afternoon rush hour are still going to be problematic. Whether it's Woodward with 7 lanes, whether it's 75 with 5 or 6 in either direction as well, or whether it's Coolidge possibly with 1 or 2, rush hour is still going to be difficult for a motorist. It's congestion's inherent to those time periods. What we want to try to measure is, what does the congestion look like outside of rush hour? Is this able to facilitate better traffic movements outside of those rush hour periods? Will the side streets see an increase in vehicles, as I talked about before? We need to do specific measurements on how many vehicles we're seeing on those side streets. So we have a number of different ways to calculate those, as well as not just traffic, but speed as well, or not just volume, but speed as well. Will drivers acclimate to the new configuration? Again, we know that there's going to be an initial period where there's going to be the need to get used to the new normal here. But at the end of a year, were drivers able to acclimate? Were they able to make better use of the street itself? And last is a little bit more broad, but just will this generally improve the experience of Coolidge for all users, not just your drivers? Again, it's important to remember that this is in our downtown. It's why many think of the 12 Mile as the city's downtown. We have this wonderful stretch of Coolidge as well, with all these unique and interesting buildings that right now most people just select to drive to. And by improving the parking situation, by improving the comfort that people will have with actually being able to get out of their vehicles without it feeling like the travel lanes are so close to them, there could be some benefits there that would make the experience of utilizing Coolidge, even outside the vehicle, more pleasant. And then kind of a summary statement here. As I said, there's been numerous case studies. There's been computer models that have tested this. But, and there's always a but, there's any kind of chance here that Berkley is just unique and Coolidge specifically is unique, whether there's something that's not being captured here, whether there's something that hasn't been tested before, whether the case studies aren't particularly applicable. The only way to understand if this is actually going to work for our city, for our street, is to try repainting some lines for a period. And then actually we would know. You don't have to rely on any outside information. We've got Berkeley-specific data and Coolidge-specific data on hand after trying this. So the resolution you have is kind of a jumping off point for what the city's stance on this evaluation period would be. It's not meant to be a complete document. And so one of the things that we've been discussing internally, as well as a couple of members of council here, is first and foremost, let's clarify the duration of the evaluation period. We say specifically into the resolution to say that we're talking about a one-year evaluation period. I think it'd be appropriate if Public Safety and Public Works both are allowed the opportunity to have final sign off on the drawings before they go out to bid. Councilmember Blanchard had mentioned that. I think it's a very good suggestion. And then, of course, clarification and timeline for the implementation schedule. And then there are a couple of things that we've mentioned here as well, whether we write in specific forms of feedback to be undertaken, manage the expectations for both the DDA and the city, who's going to be responsible for collecting that data, how is it going to be presented. These are things that would be, I think, appropriate to include either into the resolution itself, or whether we have an agreement brought forth that's maybe perhaps outside of the resolution, but referenced in the resolution. And the last item is, of course, discussion. So I hope that appropriately captures kind of where we're at now. One of the things not included here is that the city and the DDA has been working together as much outreach as we can on this. It's been discussed now at a couple of different public open houses. The DDA's hosted one, the city's hosted one. We did do some outreach, do some mailings. It's been a hotly debated topic on social media, as well as we've been receiving sort of emails, I think even as of just maybe like an hour or so ago. The City Council continues to receive emails on this topic. And then I believe there's a couple members of the DDA and a couple members of the local business community that also are ready and raring to offer up their 2 cents on the matter.
Okay. Before we go anywhere else, Council, we have a resolution in front of us. We have seen the presentation from the city manager. I know that members of council had many concerns and questions moving forward once the agenda has come out. So at this point, I want to give council the opportunity to go over concerns before we open it up then to the residents that are here. Who would like to start? Councilmember Hennon?
First, I just want to hammer home that there'd be a lot less stress and hand-wringing if more information was provided in the packets. I was stunned by the lack of information, and the public is really engaged now. So every packet we put out is an opportunity for education, and not just for council but for everybody, and we really should be using that. Several of my issues you addressed in the presentation. Some of the other issues I have, things that I would like to see in a resolution before I could approve it, is there's no mention of any of the potential downsides and cons there could be. I mean, while I think it can be successful, there, as was mentioned, there absolutely could be reasons that it increases travel time, increases congestion, increases side road use, and I want us to be cognizant that those are real things, and we are paying attention to that. Metrics. I need technical assistance to know what those metrics should be, and so we can discuss, what is an acceptable increase in traffic, an increase. How many more cars would it be on side streets before it starts to get noticeable and start to have a negative impact? This has come up a couple times, I've heard recently, the durability of the road. If we grind those lines off and that microsurface, is the road, does that compromise the integrity of the road? And especially if it fails and then we grind it a second time, is that still going to be an issue? The comments in here about the support, 125 people supporting, 65% in favor, that's just plain factually wrong and misleading. It's straight up wrong. And so people have asked for that data, and when we provide it, they're going to see that it's wrong. This is a hard enough struggle to get people on board when whoever wrote this is overselling it like that. That does not help at all. Get the information out there, be accurate, don't try and stretch the truth. It's gonna come out. And then the last thing, the need and safety of bike lanes. I did a lot of reading of academic research on it this morning. I don't think that the bike lanes will be used very much. I don't think they increase the safety very much based on our configuration, but I don't think it really hurts. So I'm okay I don't think they are any less safe than driving on the road now. So I'm okay with the bike lanes for now. But I want to completely keep on the table, if we move forward with this permanently, that we may, if we don't find those bike lanes being used, that they go away, and we use that perhaps for additional sidewalk space for something that can be activated for outside retail or dining options. So those were the biggest issues I had with this resolution as it stands now.
Councilmember Dean?
Yes, Councilmember Hennon, you mentioned that that data was just flat out wrong. And so how did you base your calculations, and what data did you use to refute what was presented to us?
It says there are gathered feedback from 125
Yes.
residents. The spreadsheet we were provided had 79, 80 pieces of feedback. So there was maybe 125 people that attended the sessions, but there weren't 125 pieces of feedback. And many of those sessions, multiple people attended both. I attended both. If I was counted,
Yes, so did I.
then I was double counted. So I don't know that we know exactly how many, and the same with the in favor, how many were in favor. We didn't ask plainly, are you in favor? That had to be teased out of the data and guessed. And so, I think that number's closer, but again, there were duplicates and people with duplicate comments, some of them anonymous. We don't know how many, so I just don't think you can say with the kind of precision that is here how many of those comments were in favor.
Okay, thank you. Also, I have concerns, or not, well, yeah, I do have concerns about the data collection. I think we have to not only, and it sounds like it's been well thought out in terms of the getting the speed and the traffic counters and all of those things, but I guess to get the residents' feedback and business owners, that's a critical piece to this. So I would like to know, how are we going to get that? Who's in charge of that study or that data gathering? And how many different ways are we going to go about gathering that data? Because I think we need a multi-pronged approach. You're not going to reach everybody in the same way. I think it has to come out in a lot of different ways to reach out to people. And then who's collecting it, who's analyzing it, and then how is it going to be presented? So I think we have to pay extreme attention to that piece as well, because this is a community thing, and we need to gather everybody's input before we do something permanent. But thanks, Mr. Baumgarten, for your presentation. I thought it was well put together and kind of gave us an overview. Thank you.
Councilmember Gavin?
Yep. Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, a couple of things what I wanted to say were already addressed by both Councilmembers Dean and Hennon. One of them certainly being the input sessions that we had, the studies, resident feedback, advisor feedback, safety concerns addressed by public safety. It would have been nice to have that included in the packet. I think that is a good point, and one that probably needs to be hammered home. The biggest missing key, or the key that I find in this whole in the resolution as it's presented, are the baseline numbers. I know that's already been something that's been hit on. We need to know accurately what we're benchmarking against. So accidents, side street traffic counts, et cetera. To me, that's the biggest thing that merits inclusion. That's good for now. Yeah, I have a couple questions later, but if you can go on to other comments first.
Just move around then.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The benchmark study part, is that going to be done between now and when the restriping takes place?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
One thing we do want to note is I want to make sure that consumers has wrapped up their work, so we don't have any skewed numbers.
Right. So how long would that study last, the benchmark study?
The TIA would take, either put out tubes, or the city would use the new radars when they come in, and they put them out for a period of time, a week, 2 weeks, something like that, collect that data, and then be able to use that to compare it to after data,
Okay,
after the restriping is complete.
okay, thank you.
Councilmember Blanchard?
Thank you, Your Honor. I've got a bunch of questions. For the city manager, will there be an education campaign for residents on how to drive with the new bike lanes? If you've driven around lately and seen the new bike lanes, it can get very confusing. The state happens to have a interesting document called What Every Michigan Driver Should Know About Bike Lanes. This may be something that we want to reproduce and make available to the drivers, because it's going to be fairly new to us, and we want to make sure that nobody gets run over. Colleen, question, do Public Act 279 and 280 have any impact on the design of the bike lanes?
The speed limits?
No, Public Act 279 and 280 are
the 3 foot, the 3 foot buffer space.
Well, that's what's confusing, because the summary of the two say 5 foot, but the actual document says 3 foot. So I don't know what it is. If it's 5 foot, we got a problem. If it's 3 foot, we're probably okay.
I think it's the language in the law that it's 3 feet.
It
It's
is
not
3
5
feet.
feet. So, yeah, the bike lanes are 6 feet, and the parking lane are 8 feet, which are wider than they are currently, so.
So you don't see any problem with that?
No.
Okay.
On that note, Councilmember Blanchard, the bike lanes are also wide enough to accommodate doors opening and closing, and gives the bicyclist area to go around without having to cross into travel lanes too. I know that was a concern that was brought up by some.
Okay, thank you. I went to talk to DPW today to look at the specs for this project, and they don't have them yet. So I got a couple questions then. Do the specs include the long lines and the bike lanes and the transition areas and the parking spaces in the spec?
In terms of space.
The painting?
Yes, absolutely.
Because in the past, when we've done long lines, the city has had to remark the parking areas and do them themselves.
The parking lines are included. At the request of the DDA, the spaces, the lines between the parking spaces have been omitted, but to maximize parking, but the long lines for the parking spaces are there.
There will be no individual marked off spaces anymore.
But there will be hatching for any place where parking is not allowed. There will be cross hatching for no parking areas.
Good for right now, I guess.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you to the city manager and administration and our partners for the additional insights around this opportunity here. We've talked a lot about Coolidge for longer than I've been on council, and others before us have faced this same conversation around with important aspirations of improved safety and throughput and things like that. And now we're finally at a point where we can actually consider running an evaluation experiment to see what might happen. There's been some great comments so far. The material's been helpful. I think we'll get some additional feedback from folks here tonight. I'm looking forward to that. What I've kind of been sketching out here are some potential amendments or tweaks to the resolution based on some of the feedback that we've been hearing. So maybe I'll ask for an opportunity again in a little bit to offer some of those more thoughtfully. But so far, some of the themes include ensuring that that we request that those comprehensive metrics and things be provided before the bid packets go out, so that we better understand specific timing for the baseline efforts, how long the measurements will be taking place, what good looks like, what bad looks like, all that kind of stuff. I think if we were to include that as part of a resolution of support and say this is our expectation that we have such a thing, that would give us that kind of insight. As to the numbers that were included in the resolution, I think those also included emails and other forms of communication outside of the face-to-face that might account for a higher number than the sign-in sheets. But even having said that, if it pleases the council, we could, part of what I could propose is to delete the last half of that sentence, so that it doesn't have any of those numbers, because we've been getting emails even up to, as mentioned earlier, an hour or two ago So maybe it's best to be better by pulling that little clause out, if that'll help. But having said that, I'm looking forward to additional comments and input, and then maybe we can have another round of dialogue, if that makes sense.
Sure. Councilmember Blanchard?
Thank you. One thing I forgot, I did summarize all of the feedback from the city's session that was held at the second floor, plus all the emails that I personally received on the road diet. And when I tallied those up and checked them out, there was 59% for, 34% against, and 7 that I deemed did not have an opinion. And based on those, we took all the questions from all of those, and we wrote answers to all those, and those were posted on the DDA's website. So all the questions that were developed from over here have been answered and were posted on it. I don't know if they're on the city's website or not. I know they are, and I looked at them on the DDA website today.
Okay. So it appears we've got a couple of different things that I've heard from my colleagues right now. The resolution that we have on its own is incomplete at best right now. Obviously what we're discussing here is something that is potentially going to impact every single resident in the city. And it's not near comprehensive enough to cover all the things that were mentioned here and some of the things that are yet unanswered. My biggest question right now that we seem to have a timeline more identified, that it's a one-year trial period. We've heard the metrics mentioned a couple of times, and benchmarking. We need to determine, or somebody needs to determine, or tell us what are acceptable drift numbers. I'd like to see quarterly reports coming in on what's happening once we move forward, but what is acceptable, is it deemed acceptable to us? I think ultimately that's what it should be to the residents and to council, as opposed to maybe whatever some outside entities say is acceptable drift. I would assume that early on, the first quarter, you're probably going to see some increased traffic in some other places and increased travel times. I want to know what that is in the first quarter. I want to know what happens the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, because for me, that's going to be critical to know if this is working or if it's not working. But if I don't have something to benchmark against and say, okay, well, there were X amount of increased traffic here, or it took X amount of additional time to get through during this time of day, those are the things that I need to know. But without having something to benchmark, again, what is appropriate and what is acceptable for council, I need to know that before, obviously, we go ahead and move forward, and at least in my opinion, with the rest of what we've talked about today. Yes, the duration of the test, responsible for the cost of grinding and restriping, if that impacts the stability of the road, the microsurfacing that we just did. The crosswalks, I had a question with those. They were brought up earlier, but I'll address that later in the meeting. I don't think that's going to be a concern anymore. And the other questions that were brought up by my colleagues, whenever you have something like this, you're going to have people on both sides. And for members of council, I'm sure, like me, we've received a ton of feedback on this. So I want to thank the residents for their feedback. Both sides, positive and negative. Sometimes it's difficult to see somebody else's point of view. You just think this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Or other people think it's absolutely wonderful and it's going to have a huge impact on the community. Our job is to take all of that feedback, apply our own questions and rationale, and try to get to what ultimately we think is in the best interest of the city. So what I want to do right now, we have a number of folks here. If we could put our podium that keeps getting moved today back to the middle. The residents that have come today that want to give their feedback, now would be the time. And then after that, council, we're going to have to come back and figure out what do we want to do moving forward with this current resolution, whether it's going to be an up or down vote, or whether we're going to make some changes or figure out a different course of action. Okay. Don't all rush up at once. I know you're all very polite. There you go. Okay. Yep.
I'll be brave. Charles Terrell from Berkeley. I really like the discussion that you've been having so far about getting the metrics down. Definitely, Mr. Mayor, we have to know what meet expectations really means, and prior to doing anything. One thing that has not been mentioned about the bike lanes is any vehicles turning onto Coolidge or off of Coolidge are going to have to cross the bike lanes as they're currently configured. That sets up all kinds of issues and problems and potential problems of bike vehicle accidents. I'm somebody who rides all over Berkeley right now. In the master plan, there are bike routes already included in the master plan. None of them are on Coolidge. So we've already got bike lanes already figured out. Take the bike lanes out of this thing. It doesn't belong. It doesn't belong on Coolidge. It'll give you another 5 feet, 6 feet, whatever it is, 7 feet, I think I saw in one of the documents. Give it back, take it, don't put bike lanes in. That's, we've already got bikes covered other places, and that's just one more thing that can go wrong with the turns on and off. And being things are so incomplete, I urge you just to shut this down tonight. Let the administration go back, take another month, 2 months, whatever it is, to get a complete package, something that can really be put together. Redlining a resolution here in a council meeting is not the way to have this done. It should be coming to you guys, to all of us, complete. To the comment about the incomplete package, I'd also ask for timeliness of the package. It wasn't posted online until after 5 o'clock Friday. So, you know, we were struggling to, for me and for others, you know, I had a busy weekend planned. So trying to read through the package and get through the information over such a short period of time. Who puts the packages together, and what is council's expectation about how soon before the meeting you should get the packages? I don't think Friday after 5 is timely enough. And I'd like to see that addressed. And apparently the package that was published was incomplete because we didn't get to see any spreadsheets of 70 or 80 people and their comments and how that was evaluated. That was not public information. Probably should have been, but it wasn't part of the published package. So we need to work on getting better packages out there.
Thank you.
My name is Nancy Stimmick from Berkeley. I'm going to make some of the same comments apparently that Chuck did. That it was disappointing this was only made public Friday and on an agenda right before Christmas when everybody's busy. It kind of feels like the whole thing was being a little bit rushed, pushed through maybe. And I know you're just listening to things now. I mean, I understand that. But every citizen deserves a chance to try and weed through all this. And there were a lot of problems with those input sessions and the comments. The comment forms didn't ask an individual if they were pro or con or just didn't know. That was a very important question. At that point, all those comments become subjective, and it's up to somebody to interpret them, and that's not a true input. The packet, as we've mentioned before, is not complete, so how are we as citizens supposed to know how to evaluate it? But my very main concern with the road diet is the bike lane. And even though supposedly, you know, a car door can open and a bike and car can go safely, you know, we're city people. Can we parallel park? I've seen some crazy parking on Coolidge, you know, and the biker could be pushed into the car lane just being surprised by the opening of a car door, a car that wasn't parked properly. Who's going to monitor the speeders on all these side streets? You know, a lot of tickets could be handed out, just like on 11 Mile, which is very well monitored, and I know both Berkeley and Huntington Woods give a lot of tickets. Who's going to monitor the speeders that are going to be endangering the people on the side streets? And there are so many outlets on Coolidge. The driveways, the side streets, the driveways, the side streets. It's just one thing after another that endangers the bikers. And at that point, then you're putting a driver at risk for hitting a biker, which is a horrible situation to be put in. And that's one I don't want to be put in. You know, I don't know who said that the pedestrian crosswalks on Coolidge would be a good idea. I hated it from the very first day, and I know within the past month, a citizen came begging that you take those down. And I've heard we just had another accident out there. So I wouldn't want to hit a biker. It just seems like there are too many things to watch on Coolidge to have a bike lane. So I am strongly against the Coolidge Road reduction. Thank you.
Hello, Eric Wheeler, Oxford Road. My notes are a bit of a mess, so maybe I can start here. There may be a couple of people in the audience who are old enough to recall this, provided I can find it. Okay, here we go. I can't see supporting this in general, particularly as it is. I'm more in favor of education for drivers, for cyclists, for pedestrians. I think that would make this whole concern work better. You know, I've walked here tonight and saw that accident on Coolidge, and it seemed to involve someone on a skateboard and not the car, you know, leaping the curb and striking a pedestrian. I think what drivers depend on is a certain amount of predictability, and if this person entered into the street rapidly, it's dark, the car did not see them and hit them. I'm taking a guess, but I'm betting that's more likely what happened than, you know, the person activating the crosswalk and going out in the car, not responding to the flashing lights and
Mr. Wheeler,
everything.
just because that happened, I don't want to speculate on what may or may not have happened, not knowing
Okay,
yet.
that's fair.
Just for people involved.
Okay, but what I was getting at, sorry, this is going to seem kind of silly, but you know, when we were kids, these kind of things played on television all the time, and again, I think that education is one of the ways. So, I see some problems with the way this is proposed, and this is observational. You know, I'm not, haven't done a formal study. I'm not funded. There are problems with bike lanes in particular, especially if they're as wide as are proposed here. A lot of people don't know how to ride, and so what you find is people going both directions on either side of the street. They think it's a bike lane. I'm over here, I need to go over here, so I'm going to ride southbound in the north lanes, I'm going to ride northbound in the south lanes. That is a big problem anywhere I've observed them. I don't know if there are laws restricting these things, but I also see the bike lanes used for scooters, whether electric or manual powers, skateboards, all of those things, and that causes a lot of confusion in the use, again, in the predictability of that movement as compared to what drivers are expecting. My car was run into on Coolidge once, as it is, and it wasn't so much an issue with there being 2 lanes of traffic. I was actually stopped at a light, and so it's if you can raise driver awareness and reduce inattention, that's more of a useful tool in the battle against accidents. So I'm sorry, I made a lot of notes, and I think that the existing laws, the existing codes are plenty if they're enforced in some way. It doesn't have to always be writing tickets, but the use of the the speed displays on 11 Mile was mentioned for Coolidge. Those, again, observationally, seem to do a lot in causing people to be aware of their speed and their driving habits along 11 Mile. And so I do see that as a useful tool. And if that, starts to fail, then, patrols on Coolidge, I think, would be effective in terms of correcting any dangerous behavior by drivers. I'll end here because I can't make sense of my own notes. But in terms of crossing, one of the bigger issues, which may be more of an issue with this plan, is that people emerging from the blind spots behind parked cars is a big hazard. And so if you increase the parking along Coolidge, I'm wondering if there's going to be more of a wider zone for the crosswalks, where no cars are parked anywhere adjacent to them, so that their visibility is heightened. These are things that I see frequently. Luckily, I haven't run anyone over. So the part of the plan that I do like is strengthening the crosswalks. I think that's a great idea. If the way the crosswalks are implemented now, if that's or rather the placement of them, if that's to be continued, then I would really like to see the lighting, the alerts made more prominent, perhaps placed over the road or made red so that people know that that means stop. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mitchell Moses. I'm definitely in favor of the road diet. It seems to me like it's a win-win-win. I'm looking at more parking on Coolidge, slowing the cars down so a lot of these accidents are going to be hopefully minimized. Safer, the diagram showed the safety. The ambulances can get through easily. Right now, it's so difficult to drive down Coolidge. You're constantly swaying back and forth. To have a straight shot is a great thing. The bike lanes, I think, are a great thing. I know a lot of people that ride, and they avoid Coolidge because there's no place to ride on Coolidge. This way, they get to ride on Coolidge. There's bike lanes in Detroit, in Hazel Park, in Ferndale, in Royal Oak, in Birmingham. I'm actually very pleased that Berkley is trying to be a little bit progressive here and trying to be with the curve or ahead of the curve in creating this new road diet / bike lanes. I think it's a good thing all the way around. Yes, there are some safety issues, and I'm also pleased that all this discussion was about the getting a starting point and a stopping point, and figuring out what these goals, parameters we're looking for. That's definitely the way to do it, and I'm glad you're giving a lot of thought to that. But I think that's, you'll come up with those answers of what's a success and what's less successful. But to move forward with this project, it's definitely an addition to our community. It's forward thinking for our community. And I think it's going to create a lot of good things in Berkley. Thank you.
Mitch.
Lori Swanson. I live over on Henley. I did like the presentation. It did make me feel a little bit better about the fact that we're going to have a baseline, and we've identified 3 streets that could be potentially negatively impacted on this. I am like the others. I'm a little bit concerned about the bike lane. Mostly I'm thinking, I really, even on the streets with the road diet, I really don't see anybody using the bike lane. So I'm thinking most drivers are not really thinking about bicyclists driving down the road. And then we also have parking, so I could see people pulling out of parking spots on the Coolidge Road and really crashing into bikes. And I also, I've done a little bit of reading on this, and I did notice that in a report back in June that was done on Coolidge Road, this road diet will reduce car traffic flow on Coolidge. So that really tells me that we're probably going to see more traffic in residential streets, and also on Greenfield and Woodward. That's all I'm going to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin McNulty, 1975 Royal. Like a bad rash, I keep coming back. This is a modern, popular, cool thing that's happening, and that's not reason enough to do it. With the 4 current lanes and the 3 proposed left turn, now the pictures with the cars colored yellow, red. Yeah, thank you. The question is, what's the real gain here? Because on the right-hand side, we see a center lane left turns. The red is turning left, the blue is turning left, and there is 1 lane going north and 1 lane going south. That's great. On the left-hand side, the red car is still turning left, the blue car is still turning left, and there's 1 lane going north and 1 lane going south. What's the difference? There's no gain here. If you want to gain, you got to make it 5 lanes and put a left-hand turn lane down the center with 2 lanes and 2 lanes, and that's incredibly expensive. But before you go spending all the money on gathering all the data, what's the advantage? Because the bridal salons, the dentists, the lawyers, the doctors, Semtech, Farina's, Chet's Rental, they're not going to benefit from slower traffic. They're not going to encourage impulse purchases with slower traffic, but we're going to piss off hundreds of drivers. And those hundreds of drivers are going to go down Kipling 25 miles an hour? Not when they're pissed off. And the question is, how many young children chase a soccer ball across Kipling between 4 and 6? Does one child have to die before we find this is a bad idea? Now the bike lanes are cool. On Saturday morning, there's like 15 or 20 cyclists racing down Cambridge, and they wear these really cute outfits. Do we want them on Coolidge? Do they want to drive on Coolidge? And does a bike lane give a false sense of security to the bike lane? Oh, I'm in the bike lane. You got to yield to me. And the cars that are turning right off Coolidge, are they going to see that cyclist? We've heard the 2 lanes create blind spots. Is that cyclist going faster than the traffic? Am I going to know that cyclist is right there when I turn right? I'm not seeing a benefit. I'm not seeing safety. You don't fix what ain't broke. But if you did this on 12 Mile, there would be benefits, but not on Coolidge. Thank you again very much for all your.
All right, thanks, Kevin. I'm going to reiterate here that just because you have an opinion, it doesn't mean that everybody else shares your opinion. So we want to hear from everybody, but it's important to not characterize just your feelings and then kind of go on something that may or may not be accurate. Invoking the image of a child being hit by a car, Kevin, I think, is a little disingenuous to our conversation here. It's an emotional ploy. I have 3 kids. Of course, I don't know that you can accurately make that assessment. If we did this, that's going to happen. So I want to keep it, your opinions is what we're interested in on it. Again, people are on both sides. Let's please try to keep it that way.
My apology.
Hi, Wendy Zabramski again, Gardner in Berkeley. I, for one, was very, very discouraged when I saw in the packet this resolution. This resolution, to me, looked like a decision was going to be made tonight in favor of this. It was very unclear. You were going by the road study of February 2018. Blah, 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 was 125 submitted. Okay, my concern is, where's the documentation? Why isn't the package complete? So I went and talked to Matt, who sent me the surveys. Okay, I received, I think this is 37 or 31, 31 I guess. So obviously that's not 140 whatever. 7 of them were plus, 4 more were plus, but they were businesses. Those businesses don't live in the city, at least from what I could tell. They're not residents. The top of the flow chart is residents, okay? Then there were 6 that I put a plus minus. There were concerns, okay? They were for it, and I'll give you some examples. They were for it. I've wanted to see this for many years. My only concern is bike lanes on Coolidge. I rather use the space for wider sidewalks and traffic lanes. So you probably counted that as a plus because he says go for it, and yet the concerns for the bike lane are there. Same thing on the next one. I was hard to read some of these, but bike and cars any more than associate. Can't read it all. But it basically said the same thing, concerns about the bike lane. Here's another one. Proposal road diet does appear to provide more benefits than hassle. I wish we had the bike lanes between the parked cars and the curb with a slight buffer for fear of riders being hit by drivers opening the car doors when pulling out of the driveway. In Coolidge, that may not see cyclists parked. Okay, and I had the same kind of feeling. It's like, okay, a car parks and there's a bike lane. Okay, the driver can see in their mirrors, but children pop out of the back seat, other adults pop out of the back seat, and are going to hit the riders. They just don't seem to go together. And anywhere I've seen, the only place I have seen so far was a little spot on Hilton. It wasn't very long, where there were both bike lane and parking on the sides of the street. Now, I don't go everywhere, so I haven't seen everything. And it was a very small area, and it was not a whole lot of businesses, and there's not a whole lot of traffic on Hilton's. Here's another one. I really like the idea without the bike lanes. So you're probably counting these as pluses, but they don't like the bike lanes. And I think, another one here, 3 lanes is superior, like we have now. However, the bike lanes between moving traffic on the left and the parked cars opening doors, so again, the bike lanes. So you guys are counting these, oh yeah, we want it, but it's the bike lanes. I do not like the parallel parking proposed, as well as existing parallel parking that exists on 12 Mile. I feel very vulnerable trying to get out of my car while opening my door into traffic lane. I feel that parking would be safer.
Wendy, I'm going to stop you for just
Okay.
a second. Matt, Mr. Manager, has this been made available online yet?
I was
information?
under the assumption it was online. I thought it was made public through the DDA's own websites, the just unfiltered feedback forms.
Right.
But like I said, when Ms. Zabransky said she couldn't find it, I had no issue just sending it right to her because
If
it's
it's
nothing to
not, I
hide.
want to make sure that it is, so that
Yeah.
you don't have to read everybody's and all the residents
Okay,
can see it.
then I will just finish summarizing my little sticker note there. Where it went? Oh, it's under here. So then, that, you know, I counted as 6 plus minus, okay, and what the reasons were. Against, there were 14, okay? That pretty much figured out to about half and half of the 39 I got. And what it brought to my mind, Dan, is what you said about the community center. 50% is not good enough. You want the city community center to be 60-40, 70-30 even. And you're seeing this as a 50-50 from what I was gathered today. And I know you guys have gotten some letters because I sent a letter, and I know some other letters have come by city council that were not positive, because I had a whole lot of things to say about it too. I think, I don't know, I think there needs to be more. I think a lot of what the summaries are slanted. I'm sorry, I am very concerned about the DDA pushing this onto this. And I just want to point out too that in the last open house, Miss Colleen, I believe, was there from HRC, and people were asking her. Somebody asked her, you know, are you here, you know, representing HRC? Is HRC getting paid for all this too? And she said she was there as a volunteer that night and as a resident. And she was kind of strong with some people, and I heard her say in particular, if you don't like it, go to Woodward or Greenfield. That's not a way to speak to our residents. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Dean Timmerman, Berkeley. One big problem I have with the center turn lane is when you get a lot of traffic backed up, that promotes people to drive 200-300 feet in that center turn lane to get to the light before it changes. I was over at 11 in Greenfield the weekend before last. I was on the Southfield side, stopped at the light. All of a sudden, my driver mirror was gone. Someone drove down the center turn lane to make that light and took the mirror off my truck. So you're going to have problems with the center turn lane. What if 2 or 3 people want to turn down the same street like at, say, the high school? Then they back up into the driving lanes. So now that's going to stop all the traffic headed southbound. Or, you know, have any of you driven past this high school when they're letting out? It's a mess now. You take away 2 lanes and it's going to get even worse. You know, I definitely do not think this is the answer. I heard at one point people were trying to say it'll slow the cars down. Post police out there. I drive up and down Coolidge every day. I live a block and a half off Coolidge. I never see cops. Any time of the day. The only time I ever see a police officer is when there's an accident. You know, I do 30 miles an hour down Coolidge, and the cars are flying past me. So, you know, maybe more of a police presence would help with issues that people are having with Coolidge. The bike turn lane, I won't ride in that. I'd go out of my way not to ride on that. I'll walk my bike down the sidewalk if I have to, because people just don't pay attention. You know, people are going to try to park. They're looking at that parking spot. They're not looking at you. They're going to try to parallel park. Well, they're blocking the bike lane now. So now I got to either swerve around them or stop. So I don't think that a bike lane, if you want more parking, do like they did on Washington, do away with if you were to go ahead with the 3 lanes, do like they did on Washington and diagonal park. You get more cars parked. You get that extra 6 feet. And if it was to go through, grate the whole road, not just the lines. Have any of you been up Main Street since they've done their bike lane thing? They ground the lines. They didn't grind far enough. You can still see some of the old lines, but at night when it's raining or snowing, it's hard to tell what line is what. I mean, the other day, first time going up Main Street since then, I actually pulled into the bike lane because it had a solid lines. It's like I couldn't tell which one was which. And I mean, I used to be a professional truck driver. I've driven 2 million miles in a semi. The other concern I have is you take it down to 3 lanes, even if you make it a no truck route, you got businesses that get semis and truck deliveries. They're very slow. They take off very slow. They take a long time to slow down before the light. People get really mad at trucks. So like I said, even if you made it a no truck route, you still got Papa's Pizza. They get trucks. Little Caesars gets a truck backed in every couple days. So you're still going to have trucks going up and down Coolidge. You know, a tractor trailer is 80 feet long. Now you got 80 feet back, several cars behind it. Now the people aren't going to make it through the light. At least now with 2 lanes, they can actually go around it and try to, and most likely will make the light. I know this isn't really part of the Coolidge diet or road restriping, but the crosswalks. You know, my pickup truck's 8.5 feet wide, 22 feet long, and 7 feet tall. If someone is in a small car next to me and they're not paying attention, they can't see that sign flashing. And someone steps out too fast before traffic's really come to a complete stop, before they made sure, that person's gonna get hit, or could get hit.
Dean, I appreciate that. That's going to be addressed actually tonight. We'll get to that. I want to keep this conversation on this right
Okay.
now, but I promise you that will be addressed this evening.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
Thank
you can continue.
That's all I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Nick Forte. I'm a property owner and a business owner on Coolidge, and will be one of the businesses that will be directly affected by what occurs. I am strongly for it, and I think that it can't happen soon enough. You know, being at the business Monday through Friday and some Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 5:30, 6 p.m. every day, we have a very front row seat about what happens every day. And I truly appreciate and value all of the residents' concerns over the traffic and the proposal and what will occur, which is why I think a study, a 1-year study, would be really important to show how it will impact traffic in the surrounding area. You know, because being there every day, seeing it, really provides a lot of data. You know, watching traffic not follow the speed limit, and I could answer some of the questions and what we see. You know, because the fact of the matter is, pedestrian crosswalks are none. Pedestrians are crossing Coolidge at the crosswalks now or not, and they will continue to, whether there's a reduction in lanes or it stays as is, because of the residential area and the school. And to answer the question about the lanes, what we see consistently on a daily basis is when they're using the 2 center lanes as a turn lane, the buildup of cars behind there, you know, 5 to 10 vehicles, while that one car is waiting, the driver frustration increases, and there is a tremendous amount of speeding that goes around the traffic. So to address, you know, having consistency and predictability for drivers, you know, that's a big part of it, and why it's leading to the pedestrian issues that are there and the speeding, because there's an urgency to get from point A to B. And so, you know, regardless of the bike lanes, the traffic, you know, I would like to propose, I know we're going to study the residential streets and see what happens, you know, and perhaps this information is available, but our speeds being measured on Coolidge now, and I'd be curious to know if the reduction in lanes will decrease the speed and bring it more in line with the posted limit, because it really does not seem like that's being followed consistently. So those were my points. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Dr. Nick Novakoski from Nova Chiropractic at 2745 Coolidge. Just want to give you guys a little insight on my business. I've been here for 2 years now. I really think this is a great idea. I think the center turn lane is much needed. I've already ran out to 4 accidents in 2 years, most of them due to turns. And with the crosswalks too, we do see a lot of issues. I think dropping it down to 3 lanes will be really helpful. I was at that accident today too. I saw what happened, and I don't think that would have happened if there were 3 lanes there. And with Matt's point too, I almost ran into, I was crossing the crosswalk, and in the 3rd lane, I couldn't see the car at all and almost got taken out by another car too. So those blind spots are definitely real, and I do think that this would be extremely helpful. Another thing we saw at my clinic as well, one of my employees had parked out in front, gotten his mirror taken off on the side. So we've so far been there 2 years, ran out to 4 accidents. We've had 2 incidents at the crosswalks. I've almost been hit at the crosswalks, and also had an employee have a mirror taken off with multiple fender benders from patients. So tons of incidences on Coolidge so far just in 2 years. I think this would be very helpful in reducing the risks there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie Price. I'm at 2773 Harvard at the corner of Harvard and Kipling, so a block off of Coolidge. I did attend both of the public input sessions, and I am in support of a lane reduction on Coolidge Highway because I believe it will make Coolidge safer for drivers, passengers, bikers, and pedestrians. What was especially compelling to me was the study conducted by the Federal Highway Administration, which found that this type of lane reduction reduces the number of crashes by anywhere from 19 to 47%. I also believe that it will be both safer and more efficient for ambulances traveling to Beaumont. And thank you to Councilmember Blanchard for confirming for me that Beaumont expressed some support for this lane reduction. So as a mom of 2 young kids, safety is my first priority, and I support this reduction because I believe it will make Berkeley safer for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Richardson, Berkeley. In 2012, the City of Berkeley amended the master plan to incorporate a multimodal transportation plan. With respect to Coolidge specifically, the transportation plan amendment states the following. Complete streets are for everyone. They are designed and operated to enable safe access for all users, pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, and transit riders of all ages and abilities must be able to safely move along and across the complete streets. Complete streets make it easy to cross the street, walk to shops, and bicycle to work. They allow buses to run on time and make it safe for people to walk to and from train stations. The city should engage the expertise, again with respect to Coolidge, the city should engage the expertise of a traffic engineer to carefully review traffic volumes, lane widths, and street cross sections to determine what changes, if any, can be made to slow traffic down, ensure that ambulances can quickly traverse the road, and ensure that pedestrians are safe, and on-street parking can occur without damage. Well, that is what the city has done. We have engaged experts. We've engaged the folks from the Transit Institute, HRC, and Spalding Dedecker, and they have come up with an idea which is intended to accomplish all the things I just listed: slower traffic, safety for ambulances, pedestrians, bicyclists, and adequate parking. We should give their recommendation a fair shot. I think the proposal to do this for a year is an excellent idea. You can never know exactly what's going to happen in the real world till you get real world data pertaining specifically to the location that you're trying to change. Couple of concluding points. Coolidge today is a relic from another time. It's a 60s, 70s roadway. I think what this proposal does is bring that avenue into the 21st century. As to bike safety, I have concerns about bike safety. I've been riding a bike for over 60 years now. I've ridden a bike in every conceivable surface and every conceivable environment you can imagine. I've ridden my bike on Michigan Avenue in Detroit, Livernois Avenue in Detroit, along Coolidge, just about everywhere you can imagine. So I have a concern about bike safety. I'm still in one piece after all that riding. And I think the reason I'm in one piece is because I have enough common sense to stay alert and aware of my surroundings. And that's what we expect of bicyclists and motorists and pedestrians. And the only thing we can do as a city is try to make the conditions reasonably safe for the reasonable person. There's an old expression, you can't cure dumb. There's going to be accidents in the future. It's inevitable. The question is, what can we do reasonably to make things safer for all people and all modes of transportation? So I think this plan is a good step in that direction. I urge you to adopt it with the appropriate amendments that you're, to your resolution that you have discussed tonight to insert the metrics we need to properly evaluate the results. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just add that this is my personal opinion only. It does not reflect the Planning Commission or the Environmental Advisory Council. Neither of those bodies has taken any position on this proposal. This is my personal opinion as a citizen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brandon Alger, Berkley resident, also speaking as myself as a resident and not anything greater than that. But I have had a couple chances to talk with Director Carmody over the past couple months, and I want to publicly state that I think her work and the DDA's work and vision for downtown Berkley has been impressive. I think they understand the careful balance of preserving this really cool mid-century feel that is downtown Berkley while also embracing the future and putting all the right steps in place so that we avoid being overshadowed by our larger neighbors in Royal Oak and Birmingham. The Woodward Corridor, the 10 communities and one township that make up southeast Oakland County of the Woodward Corridor is about 210,000 people. That would be the second largest city in the state if that were one city, and the 40 or so square miles is a greater density than that of Grand Rapids. So we do live in an urban or semi-urban area, and to me a road diet is a significant part of modernizing our infrastructure and having the foresight to keep Berkley modern. I know we've heard a lot of concern comments tonight. Some are very valid, and I think having metrics in place also is very valid. Anything that you want to approve after a planning period needs a goal. So that should be taken into consideration. And I was going to talk a bit about some of the Federal Highway Administration, but I think Matt covered that very well. some of the resources they have online about the improved emergency response times. I won't go over that again, but it does improve emergency response times, and there's a lot of information that backs that up, and I suspect that in a trial period we would find that the same thing occurs here. Another thing that was touched on that I think is very important is this idea that if you remove a lane of straight travel, that travel will back up. But the Federal Highway Administration, again, has a lot of documentation that, again, states this is not accurate, and that road diets do not adversely affect travel times within a corridor, and rather they clear the clogged travel lanes of left-turning traffic, and this improves overall operations. It goes on to state that road capacity is not dedicated by the number of lanes, but rather by the intersection. The proposed road diet has plans for a dedicated left turn lane, a dedicated right turn lane, and a dedicated straight lane for our largest intersections, which is an improvement over the current situation where right turn traffic and through traffic share a lane. It also creates a situation where you don't have the speeder that wants to go 45 that can weave in and out of the 30-mile-an-hour traffic because they have that extra lane to go back and forth and create problems. But a good question that's been brought up is why do we want this, and what do we even accomplish by doing this? And really, the biggest thing is safety. 4-lane undivided highways are some of the most dangerous roads in our transportation system today, and they're probably the most dangerous roads that some of us regularly drive on, unless you're dealing with 696 construction right now. But when that goes back to normal, 4-lane undivided highways will be among the most dangerous roads that we regularly drive on. They're so dangerous that after this road diet's implemented, I would hope that the city takes a serious look at 11-mile for sure, and potentially if the county can work with us with 12-mile as well, as I believe there is potential for lane reconfigurations on both of those roads. The Iowa Department of Transportation had a case study that I thought was really impressive that showed that 4-lane undivided roads, they have twice the crash rate, so this is a per capita rate, that when contrasted with 3-lane roads. Similar studies have been recreated by both the Federal Highway Administration and MDOT. I think Iowa's Department of Transportation study is really impressive. It's worth looking at. Bike lanes, a lot of discussion on cycling lanes this evening. Cycling lanes are a passive benefit, and they are necessary, though. I think they increase the connectivity with our neighbors in the urban community that we live within. You're seeing more of these come about in Ferndale and Royal Oak. Huntington Woods and Oak Park are looking into being better connected with Berkley. The manner that is proposed is the same manner that bike lanes are constructed throughout the metro, throughout the state. It's a very common manner for bike lanes. It's not excessively dangerous. It doesn't create the situation where you're going to have a lot of issues. Road diets and lane reconfigurations, they're not a one-size-fits-all solution, and I understand that. I think the DDA has done their due diligence and shown that this is a potential solution for Coolidge. And with the proposed testing period, we have an opportunity to confirm that. In summary, if we have the support from the Federal Highway Administration, MDOT, other state departments, AARP even has a document about the benefits of road diets, our own DDA and their traffic consultant, all confirming that these types of lane reconfigurations make the roads safer, make it better. And I would hope that our city council can join the engineers and professionals who live and breathe this stuff with their support as well, with any additions that are needed to make this approvable.
Thank you.
Good evening. Andy Gilbert, Berkley property owner as well as business owner. I can tell you, I'm not going to repeat what everyone else has said. There's been a lot of good pro and con. What I will do is leave you with these questions today. We have just south of 19,000 cars traveling Coolidge back and forth today. Do we need 19,000? If some of them migrated to Woodward or to Greenfield, would that be a horrible thing? We've been here for 10 years, and long before that, we were having accidents on Coolidge. We were having mirrors dropped off. I haven't seen a perfect road in our country yet that has no accidents on it and no crashes and no fatalities. So all we can do is try new things and develop things that work. This is a temporary solution that can possibly work, but we won't know it until we try it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
I like to listen to everyone's comments before I make.
You got me just before I was going to
Matthew
shut
Gross,
it down.
MHG Jewelry on Coolidge. I'd like to address the council and people that came that are against it. Because you guys are the ones that I'm talking to. We wouldn't be here unless there was a problem that was looking obvious. I've been in Berkeley, my business, since 1995. I was on 12 Mile at Robina before the parking was put back on. It was a highway almost. There were a lot of accidents. There were a lot of complaints. I was upset about it, and so I joined the DDA to get the parking put back on 12 Mile. It was also a ghost town. There was nothing there. The parking helped, and it slowed down the traffic, and it got rid of a lot of the pass-through traffic. It pushed it to 11 Mile. It's still, there's a lot of traffic on 12 Mile, but it's not the way it was. It was a highway. I've been on Coolidge since 2001. I have seen so many accidents, it kills us. This is not going to help my business. My business is a destination business.
I'm going to ask you to please address council.
I'm sorry.
It's
my business
strange.
is not.
I understand, but it's strange to be
right.
addressing
It's
the
fine.
residents who are
It's
not
fine.
here for that.
But these are the people that are against it,
They
and
can
you
hear
guys are
Thank you.
just listening to everything. My business, I don't care if it comes or it goes. But I'm sick of seeing these accidents. I'm sick of seeing the bumper accidents. I'm sick of seeing exactly this. And what's missing in this picture? The people. That's what's missing. So do people want to walk across this, or do they want to walk across this? This is clearly a little different. If you had to choose, if there was no road here, it was just dirt, which one would you choose? The one that I would choose would be the one that's being advised as a little bit safer situation. My wife and I share a car, and I ride a bike every day.
Can you go back up to the?
Okay.
I got to keep some order here.
Okay. I ride a bike every day.
All right.
I'm not sold on the bike lane, but I'm not an expert on bike lanes. So I'm looking at it going, you guys want to try it for a year? I'll try it. I ride down Coolidge where there's parallel parking in front of La Salette and where the Taco Bell is. I ride in that parking. And then I pop back up onto the sidewalk, which is illegal. And then I get back on when there's more parallel parking. If the experts say that it's safer, I will try it. And I will ride down. But I have no interest.
I got to get you around.
I have no interest in riding down somewhere that's not safe. Okay. But I will try it. The reason why we're here is because people are getting hurt, and there are cars that are clearly waving in and out, and it's dangerous. My customers, people, they've lost mirrors. I've watched 2 accidents myself, witnessed them, and had to give statements. And it's very scary. If there wasn't a problem, we wouldn't be here. If we want to, and as far as enforcement, I personally have called multiple times asking to please position an officer, at least at Dorothea, to show the people going down Coolidge to please slow down. They have other things to do. They're very busy. I'm not going to fault them. Berkeley police are amazing. I'm not just a Berkeley business owner, but I live at 11 in Coolidge. So I'm not just this guy that lives out wherever, some other city. I live here. My kids went to Berkeley High. I graduated from Berkeley High. I have an invested interest in the city where I live. I spend 8 hours at home and 12 hours at my store. So I live at my store more than I'm at home. We're looking for safety. As the last gentleman before Andy said, it's been studied by the experts. Experts have been wrong, but let's give them a chance. Because right now, we have a problem, and we'd like to see if we can fix the problem. And that's it.
Thank you. Wendy,
I just have one other.
Okay,
it's
we've got to move.
It's
Okay.
connection.
Okay.
Again, regarding the bike lanes.
Yep.
Okay. Bike lanes are there. I can see adults riding it, 14-year-old. Okay, where do we draw the line? What about the 10-year-old? What about the 8-year-old? Do we want them on a bike lane in that situation? And I really, really do not appreciate you getting talking
Wendy,
to us like
okay,
that.
all right.
I
So
thought
get
that was
it.
very rude.
I tried to stop that.
But you didn't. You let it go.
Oh my God. No, I didn't, and now you're doing the same thing. So it doesn't work that way. All right, council, we need to have some discussions here. Well, do you want to come up? Sorry, this will probably be around the last one, but I want to make sure everyone has at least an
I'll
opportunity
try to
speak.
make it quick.
Oh, no, go ahead.
My name is Annalise Petras. I live on Franklin and Berkeley. I wrote an email in. I just wanted to reiterate that in our effort to be complete streets, I find the resolution and the plan ahead of us incomplete. It does not have pedestrian counts. It doesn't have a full plan that shows that the bike lanes are also incomplete. They do not go continuously. It has to cross back to sidewalks. The diagrams are incomplete. These diagrams don't show parking. They don't show bike lanes. So the reference material is incomplete. The model, other cities that have done this, did they have schools that had drop-off and pickup times? But the biggest thing that's incomplete is the cross-town traffic. So people who live a block or two away from Coolidge, the biggest challenge is to turn left onto Coolidge from your street. So in doing this, what will happen, or what is being said has happened, is that the one lane becomes continuous. It's that will be more cars, and to turn left will be more of a challenge. So in doing that, we are not adding any left turn lanes to other streets to make it easier for residents to get out in a safe way. So that's all I'm trying to get at, is to go at this in a complete way and not move ahead until there's been more done, so that including metrics, just measuring the north-south is not good enough. We need to measure along Cadalpa. We need to measure along Wiltshire and Harvard so that we can see where traffic is going before and after. So hopefully we can just improve this quite a bit. Thanks.
Thank you. And that brings us kind of right back to where we started. Her first comment was that we're dealing with a resolution that is incomplete. And that's what we said at the outset. And we have had, we had some discussion, we had concerns. We've heard from a number of residents on both sides. And if my math is tallied up, it's right about split down the middle here in terms of what happened in this room today. So what we need to do is take some time as a council to identify what we want the next steps to be, if there are to be next steps in this process. We have a resolution in front of us. It has been moved. It has been supported. It can be amended. It can be, there are a number of different things that can happen now, but we need to have a discussion now that we've heard a lot from the residents, and a lot of what we heard today was similar to the comments that I've received from residents, again, on both sides. The bike lane has been a more prolific area of concern in many of the feedback that I have gotten. And we need some direction here in terms of what we want to do. We're not going to solve this tonight, I can tell you that right now. It's not going to happen. We're not rewriting what probably needs to be 4 to 5 pages at this meeting. That's not going to work. But we do need to identify a way forward if council wants a way forward with this. So that's where I'm at right now. So I'll be looking for feedback on what we have, what we want to see moving forward, and then ultimately we need to come to a resolution today on how we're going to do that. Councilmember Hannan.
Yeah, I actually have a point of discussion going back to what we were discussing before. One thing I failed to mention, and no one's failed to mention, is one of the purposes of this, beyond just safety, is also business development. A lot of businesses like foot traffic, and pedestrians like roads that they're more comfortable on. And the research is that road diets such as this one that's proposed make pedestrians more comfortable. It's not going to be driving people to Chet's. It's not going to be that kind of thing, but it is a long-term strategy and a long-term plan. And the road diet in isolation doesn't work, but as part of a larger plan can be that kind of business catalyst and business development. So while safety's a very large component of it, also business development is also part of what I'm looking at too.
Okay. So who wants to hop in then? As Councilmember Hannan decided to opt out right now on that, on what we're going to do tonight with this resolution. In the absence of ideas, I will come up with my own. Yes.
Make a motion to postpone until we have more information.
Additional comments. Councilmember Gavin, we'll just move around the room here. What would you like to see?
Do we need a...
Well, we've got, we
Okay.
want to take it, yeah, we'll.
Yeah, I actually, can I ask a quick question?
Well,
Or,
as a point of order, we're going to discuss the motion before it's been supported. You made the motion?
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Second.
All right, discussion.
yeah, so I just have a quick question, Your Honor. And I know they're kind of deviating a little bit from what we're talking about here, but is it possible to actually craft and make public the RFP for the services while at the same time, I guess let me back up. Is it possible to just at least craft in conjunction with the traffic counts actually being executed, like in February? To basically do the two things at the same time? Or are we talking about a 1, a 2, a 3, 4 step right after each other?
It's a good question. I don't see any reason why you would not be able to do both at the same time. One of the benefits of trying to go out to bid in the winter months is that you tend to get better prices back. And I wouldn't want to, as I stated earlier, I wouldn't want to have the traffic counts hindered in any way by the current conditions out there. But I don't see any reason off the top of my head why you could not do the two at the same time. I don't think the DDA should move forward with expending the resources to develop these specs without council giving them the go-ahead to actually make changes to what is essentially council's road.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That answers that. And I guess one other quick question, if I may. Colleen, how long would it actually take to complete the construction portion of the process, and kind of when would it be done actually to minimize traffic impact?
Most of the it'll be similar. The restriping, that type of work would be similar to what happened when the microsurface. It would be a nighttime work.
Okay.
In general, that's easier for you for traffic and to reduce the congestion that you'd see during peak hours. Gives the contractor longer time period to work.
Okay.
But yes, and that would be the general, and it depends on contractors and crews, but it will be a few weeks at least.
Okay.
Of construction.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess it just at this point, without hearing a potential rewrite or amendment at this point, I would probably lean towards postponement, but within a very dedicated time frame. Not I want to make sure we can't keep moving the ball down the field to find out whether this is something that's actually going to work or not. So I would be, while I think postponement is again, I would lean that way. I do want to make sure that it's not sort of an open-ended postponement at all. And so part of the reason why I'm curious about timing for both portions of that.
Thank you. Councilmember Dean?
I would agree with what's been stated so far, and in particular, not having this be open-ended. I think if we can say, and I don't know what would be a comfortable time frame or actually a reasonable time frame. Could this come back in January? Is that too early? Or maybe our second meeting in January? Because I think that we do have momentum going.
Two this time.
I'm sorry?
No, one.
We do have one?
Martin Luther King Day.
One
Oh.
one for January, one for February.
So we could have a special meeting.
Right.
Yes.
So that would be my inclination, would be to table this for a minute and bring it back as soon as feasibly possible with, more information in place.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not actually sure what we would gain by postponing it. What would we wait to get back? I did have, listening to the excellent comments and feedback from everybody here, the thoughtful dialogue and a whole bunch of notes, and I did sketch out a potential amendment to address what I thought we were concerned about. But if their concern is that we don't have the baseline yet, then obviously we won't have the baseline for quite some time into the, at least post consumers' work and those kinds of things. So that's not really a brief pause if that's our objection. If it's simply to make sure that the essence of what we've been talking about is communicated clearly to the DDA and the folks moving forward, then I think we could address that tonight. I think it's pretty clear the kinds of things that we're looking for from this process, right? Earlier, the dialogue around can we do the traffic counts and move forward with the bidding process? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think the traffic counts affect the bid process at all, right? The traffic counts absolutely should happen, and if we were thinking about actually doing this, the bidding process should proceed so that we can make the most use of the DDA's dollars, which come from the businesses that we've heard from tonight and others. So I don't think those are in conflict at all. I think if we were to delay, it would just add additional confusion to that process. Again, I could distill what I think the essence is of what we find missing in this, if that would help. But that's a whole separate thing. So pertaining to the motion on the table, I'm not in favor of postponing.
Councilmember Stedman?
I'll wait.
I had a question or another comment. The information that I'm referring to is how are we gathering the information, who's those kinds of things. It's more nuts and bolts, if you will, and just, how are we compiling it? How is it being analyzed? That kind of thing. So not necessarily grabbing, because we did a traffic study. So, yeah, lots of traffic studies. So not necessarily that, but more the practical how-tos with the information gathering and things like that. So just to clarify.
I think I've got that in.
Okay.
If we didn't approve it tonight, would January 7th, and I think the only thing that we're really concerned about is the resolution, and that it's not complete. Would January 7th be okay to have this corrected and brought back?
Matt, do you want to weigh in before I do?
I will in part defer back to Colleen on the time it takes to put together metrics like this. But I can tell you that we have been working on a communication plan, and we borrow also from the Planning Commission's public participation plan, which is both those documents were created to address issues like this for the feedback plan and how we intend to get the word out, how we intend to get word back. That I feel confident that we could have in front of City Council by the 7th. I don't foresee any issues with that as well. We could work hand in hand with the DDA's executive director on fleshing out the proposal itself. My open question, ma'am, is I don't know how quickly a cohesive set of metrics can be put together. So I would defer to our traffic engineer on that one.
Well, based on comments that we've heard tonight, speed, volume, things like that would automatically be included. I believe that could be done before January 7th.
What about the benchmarking? What are we going to be using for the benchmarking, and what are we going to be judging against, and what is the amount of drift that we'll be looking at?
We would still have to, we would still have to be, get the baseline data. So granted, we wouldn't have the baseline data in January because you have schools off and you have things that you have to make sure that you get away from the holidays enough, and we get rid of the Coolidge construction from utilities. So we would have to get baseline data, but we could build that in based on the baseline data and then a percentage increase or percentage change based on what the city council would accept.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think the proposal has merit, but there are a number of things. Nobody in the city has seen the specs yet. The DPW director and the public safety director have to manage this plan. The DPW director owns the streets, basically, and we've got a plan to modify his streets, and he hasn't seen it yet. And he needs some time to see it and to go over it. I think the public safety director needs the same thing. He needs to look at how it's laid out in great detail to make sure that he knows what he's going to do as far as traffic enforcement and any areas that he thinks are a problem. And I don't know how long that's going to take because I haven't been able to get the specs yet. So that's one item. Education is another item. I mentioned earlier that we need to educate the drivers and the bike riders, and that can be done in conjunction with other stuff, but we have to make a plan and figure out how we're going to do that.
Okay.
So I'm in favor of postponement.
There is a motion on the table, but before we call for a vote on that, Mayor Pro Tem, you mentioned
I could, so since there's a different motion on the table, I could at least share my thoughts around what this might.
Before we vote. So
and then we
know
could
what
decide, and then if we vote down the postpone it and you guys don't actually like this, then we can re-vote to postpone it again. We can go back and forth. Because we still have a half an hour before we have to extend the meeting. Before I do that, City Manager, was the Director of Public Works and/or the Director of Public Safety in any of your staff meetings over the last 6 to 9 months?
They were, yes, sir.
And were they aware of the plans? And
They're aware of the plans generally. They looked at the like the materials that we have like here that we've developed. They have not actually done a sign off on the proposal that will be going to bid itself.
Right, and I imagine it's because the proposal hasn't been finalized because we haven't had this discussion yet.
Correct.
Okay. So what I was thinking in the resolution, there's in the therefore part, there's currently one section, and it talks about supporting the 4 lanes to 3 and all this kind of stuff. What I'd like to offer is a section 2 that requests or declares our expectations around all the things that I think are missing, right? And so without officially offering this up, I'll just share as part of my additional thinking on the postponement what I might like to see as part of this section 2. Something to the effect of section 2, that the council expects comprehensive metrics, timelines, and communication plans to be refined and included as part of any bid package and public outreach efforts prior to beginning any road restriping experiments, thereby ensuring the city understands what will be tracked and how the data will be assessed. I mean, that's just me cobbling something together real quick, but I think that at least captures the spirit, talks about the metrics, the timeline, the communication plans, clarity, as part of any bid package before it goes out, so that we have that guidance.
Before any bid package goes out.
Yeah.
So we would have to have all that information before this could even go out to bid.
Right, yep. For any bid package and public outreach. Well, it would be refined and included as part of any bid package and public outreach efforts prior to beginning the work.
Would that come back to us?
It would have to.
No, it wouldn't. We've already approved. If we vote what he says, we approved it, it won't have to come back to us.
Well, if that gets approved.
Yeah, if we were to add something like this would affirm that administration and DDA, the folks that we've heard from tonight, would, yeah, they're administering the bid, yeah.
I will say, and Mr. City Attorney, please correct me if I'm incorrect here, but if the City Council makes rates in contingencies any resolution that passes specific to this project, it does set the expectation for administration and the DDA. If City Council says we want to see this come back to us for any specific reason, Council and DDA would abide by the resolution passed by Council. So it's not like no matter if any sort of support goes through, then the train leaves the station. We would abide by, again, the resolution passed by Council. As a clarifying note.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I think you were using the word expects. Maybe a stronger, clearer word would be requires.
I would require such a
Then I
change.
think that is a clear message that it is to come back, this information is to come back to council, and it's not just a request if not too inconvenient kind of thing. So.
Councilmember Hennon?
Yeah, a few items. Traffic counts, I didn't expect that we would, that as part of the required information before we can move forward. More things I'm interested in is like specifically the metrics we're discussing, and not a squishy, we'll figure out the metrics later. I could only support something if I knew what those metrics that we were going to approve were. So in concept, I don't have a problem with Mayor Pro Tem Baker's resolution, but I need the specifics. And I'm not opposed to, I didn't realize we only had one meeting in January. I think January 7th is probably early only because I think they could get the information to us, but it would be last minute. And we would have the same situation where we and the public are scrambling to deal with it. I'm not opposed to holding a special meeting later in the month to, continue to expedite this, because I agree we, should continue to move it forward, and my purpose isn't to delay it until it dies. It's just to get all the correct information.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table. We've heard Mayor Pro Tem's proposed amendment, but we do have a motion on the table, so we do need to vote on the postponement. Was made by Councilmember Hennon, supported by Councilmember Blanchard. So we are calling, Ms. Boucher, please call the roll on the postponement motion.
Hennon?
Yes.
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
No.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
No.
Gavin?
Yes.
And Turbrack.
It happened that way? Well, I am going to say no, and I'm going to say no for the purposes of just allowing us to have the conversation about Mayor Pro Tem, what he said. And then if we need to further address that, we can have another motion to postpone, but I didn't want to get too far into the woods or into the weeds with another motion on the table. We've heard from Mayor Pro Tem. We've heard some feedback on what would be required, to be able to confidently, at least for Councilmember Hennon, move forward. What about additional members of council? Well, I'm going to go around again, sorry. We're going to start with you, Councilmember Gavin.
What I would say is I like in concept what the Mayor Pro Tem is trying to do, and if we can hash something out I know it's a little bit difficult without the hard and fast, but if we can hash something out tonight, I do have a lot of concern about this extending too far out. I think that for me that's a very a real issue, and so I guess for lack of a better way to describe it, I just would like to hear a little bit more, because I could definitely I could get behind that.
Okay, Councilmember Hennon, we've already heard what you
I have just one additional thing is I've never understood our urgency to move this very quickly, and that applies tonight too.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dean?
I like what Mayor Pro Tem has proposed with the language, the word change of requires. And if I may respond to Councilmember Hennon, I think just this has been in the works for a long time. My background is with the DDA, and so they have been doing a lot of work toward this within the Complete Streets program, as well as traffic studies and all those things. So while I do believe there is a sense of urgency here, it really is not born of urgency for urgency's sake. I think that this has been a long-term project that is finally getting to a place of testing and implementation. And so I think that's where the sense of urgency might be coming from.
Before I keep moving, I do agree, but I don't think we need to get backed into moving on something just because it's on here, just because it's come to this point. I'm not a fan of being pushed into making any decision. Not saying that that's necessarily the case right now, but I understand that, look, at the end of the day, if for whatever reason this didn't happen, in my opinion, doesn't mean tonight that it's gone forever. That may be what some people think, and if they do think that, then they have the wrong mentality about how things work. I feel like we're pretty confident. I know where you stand on something like this. Okay, Councilmember Stedman. So right now, we don't have a motion on the table. We're discussing the merits of Mayor Pro Tem's amendment.
I do like his motion.
As is?
Yeah.
Councilmember Blanchard?
Well, I have concerns about making sure that this is reviewed by everybody and all the stuff is put together, and I don't think we can do it, number one, by January 7th, and have a quality product. This has to be bulletproof. We've got to look at the ins and outs of everything. We've got to look at the specs. We've got to look at traffic studies again. We've got to look at where we're going to do our counts. We've got to look at what our benchmarks are. And that I don't want to rush. I want to make sure it's done right. And so I still don't think it can be done in that time. Your amendment is good, but still would like to hold out for more time and just completely sit down and rewrite this whole thing.
All right, I did just misspeak a minute ago when I said we didn't have a motion on the table. We obviously have the main motion still on the table. But at that point, we don't have any additional amendment on the table right now, so
I'll make that motion to at least have the formal dialogue around it. I'll move to amend the resolution with a section 2 that reads that the council requires comprehensive metrics, timelines, communication plans to be refined and included as part of any bid package and public outreach efforts prior to beginning any temporary road restriping experiments, thereby ensuring the city understands what will be tracked and how the data will be assessed.
is everybody on council clear on that? Hear it? Sure. Clerk, Madam Clerk, are you clear on that?
Yes.
Yeah, got it? Okay.
So that's a motion.
Motion. Is there support for that motion?
Support.
Supported by Councilmember Dean. Additional discussion on that motion? Seeing none, Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Stedman?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
No.
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennon?
No.
And Turbrack?
No. I don't know if my math is
tally
right
look
here.
like?
What do we have?
4 and 3.
4 yeses?
Yes.
All right.
So we have now passed a resolution with the amendment, section 2. Is that, we passed the amendment.
No, we just did the motion to amend it.
Amend it.
Now we have to pass it with, as amended. Okay, well, I think we've exhausted the conversation on this. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll on R 3918 as amended?
Okay. Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennon?
No.
Stedman?
Yes.
And Turbrack?
No. R 3918 has passed. And with that, we now move on to our next agenda item at 9:40, which is communications. Ms. Boucher, I just did not even pay attention. Who is up?
That would be Blanchard.
Councilmember Blanchard.
Oh, I get a start, okay. Not much tonight. A little bit on safety as usual. I've got two sheets that I put over there on the table. One is carbon monoxide safety and one is portable generator in use in winter storms. One thing about carbon monoxide, it is a known killer. The symptoms include headache, fatigue, shortness of breath, nausea, dizziness. High levels of CO poisoning result in progressively more severe symptoms, including mental confusion, vomiting, loss of muscular coordination, loss of consciousness, and ultimately death. So be careful this Christmas season. I'm not going to go into Christmas tree safety stuff again. I've covered that before, because those of us that are with public safety don't want to be running around in the snow. So be careful. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Councilmember Stedman.
For the library board, again, please check the website for any programs that they're having during the holidays. I know there's quite a few for young children, for teens, and for adults. I would like to thank Dan and Anela Mihaiescu for the presentation they did on the holiday lights. I think they did a wonderful job. They do a wonderful job with that committee, and we saw some great holiday lights displays. And the CEAC, which is the Community Engagement Advisory Committee, meets again on January 2nd. And at that time, we're going to be finalizing plans to ask for area representatives in the city that can help disseminate information. Like it could be, and this is unbiased information. This is just to disseminate facts. I mean, let's say it was, it had been for the bond issue for the community center. We would want people who would be unbiased and could just relate the facts to their neighbors. Somebody that walks their dog every day, you know, talks to people around this, the block and so on. And so we're going to make plans for how to do that so that we can communicate any really important events that happen in Berkeley or are about to happen. So I'll let you know more in January. And that's all I have tonight. Have a very happy holiday.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple quick updates. We've heard a lot about the DDA tonight. Just a few more quick things. The Merry Month continues throughout our downtown. Thanks to all of those who attended the Merry Music Jazz at Berkeley First Church, and thanks to the library and their board for making that all happen. That was awesome. There was also an ugly sweater contest on Saturday. I was there at that, and there we have a lot of ugly sweaters, ugly Christmas sweaters. That was a lot of fun as well. And a quick reminder, the library is, through the DDA, has Merrily We Share food drive, canned goods at the library until December 22nd. Finally, with the DDA, the holiday window decorating contest continues. Voting is available online until December 24. The website for the Downtown Development Authority is downtownberkeley.com. Historical Committee, thanks to the Mom Club for bringing a bunch of kids to the museum earlier today. I heard that they had a grand time seeing the city's history and talking about where the future may take us. And as always, the committee welcomes any additional members who'd like to come be a part of helping preserve our city's past as we pave new ways forward. Come visit them at the museum most Sundays from 2 to 4 and Wednesdays from 10 until 1. The Technology Advisory Committee, TAC, their most recent meeting toured the Department of Public Works, the DPW building. This new committee is going to each of the departments to learn more about what their needs are. So thanks to Derek and Sean and the team out there for being such great hosts. Next month, the committee continues those tours and begins focus on short-term and long-term goals as part of for the city, which can feed into the budget season, which is almost upon us as well. And finally, it was Winston Churchill who once said, "Christmas is a season not only for rejoicing, but also of reflection. And so when I think about what a year we've had here in the city, right, all sorts of fun stuff going on, very thoughtful dialogue like we've seen here tonight, because we are so passionate about this community. I'm very thankful, and as I reflect on what this year has been for us, lots of crazy things going on and great stuff all around. So as you reflect and enjoy the holidays, both I hope those are safe, and I hope that you reflect on what a year we've had and what 2019 has to offer for us. Thank you.
Councilmember Dean?
Yes, I want to extend a huge thank you to Farina's for hosting the 11th Annual Senior Luncheon. On behalf of council members Gavin and Blanchard, don't be nervous, I'm speaking for you. The three of us had the opportunity to volunteer at the luncheon, and I can tell you it was a really fabulous afternoon. And it's a great day for seniors in our community to come together and to celebrate the holiday, and we were all happy to be part of that. Registration for winter programs is now open through Parks and Rec. This is a big one. The tickets are on sale now for the Daddy-Daughter Dance, which takes place January 19th, and the Mother-Son Dance, which takes place on January 26th. These dances are sellouts, so you've heard it here first, maybe, I don't know. But if you want to go, you should get on those tickets. And then another thank you to the Friends of Parks and Rec for their gifts and donations for the Open Gym Play Group through Parks and Rec. They do a great job. I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a healthy, happy, prosperous New Year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hennon?
The Tree Board nor the Environmental Committee met this month. They're meeting again in January, the Tree Board on Monday the 14th, and the Environmental Committee on Thursday the 24th. And then my next talk with Dennis will be on Tuesday, January the 8th at the library. Drop in anytime from 6 to 8. That's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Gavin?
Thank you, Your Honor. Coolidge Task Force met, and there was a lot of discussion about the consumer's gas line, along with the road diet, public input. Planning Commission, obviously we saw something on the agenda here tonight, and then there were a couple discussions about the design overlay district, and also ordinance that talks about the percent of facade changes and administrative review and when that's appropriate. So there was no ZBA meeting, and I too, like Councilmember Dean and others, want to wish everybody a great holiday. So thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Baumgarten?
I just want to say I want to thank the folks that dedicate a lot of their time to making sure the museum is as new things opened. They take in new materials, new artifacts. I love to pop over there on my lunch hour on occasion and just take a look at things. It's a great way to feel connection to the city's history, to our forebears. It's absolutely a labor of love for a lot of those volunteers, and they put countless hours in, and the proof is really in the museum itself. So if you haven't had a chance to go by there and take a look at it, it is just a wonderful display of the city's history. I want to thank those that were honored for putting up the Christmas lights. It absolutely, it may seem like a little thing, but it's one of those things that makes Berkley wonderful. It certainly adds to mine and my family's enjoyment of the holidays. It's a blast to kind of look down the side streets and see all these things lit up. I want to thank my neighbor who also has a 20-foot Santa Claus in their front yard, which is, they weren't on the list here, but it is an impressive sight to see. And finally, just from all of us at City Hall, from the City of Berkeley's staff, and then from the Baumgarten clan, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and have a safe and prosperous 2019.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, you don't have anything today, do you?
Just happy holidays to everyone. Thank you.
Mr. Attorney.
I'll jump on the bandwagon too and wish everybody a festive, safe, and reflective holiday season and Happy New Year. And for those of you like me who have a close family member coming home for the holidays, hope you enjoy every minute of it.
Just a couple of quick items. I was a little bit surprised, Mr. Attorney, that we didn't get any kind of marijuana update since we typically do. But that's fine. I got it.
I figured you were tired of it, and I kind of have a feeling we're going to be talking about it again.
We are going to be talking about it again, and we are going to be talking about it again in February. The city is going to have an open house style event, and one thing we heard today was that we had this open house and we had feedback and information on the item that we just talked about, but there wasn't a clear yes or no. There's going to be a clear yes or no. You show up, there'll be some sort of card. You're going to put it in somewhere that's a yes or a no, because, again, this is also an item or an issue that we've heard up from a lot of residents, both pro, both con. We want to be able to have that conversation in one place to gather as much feedback as possible, and that will be happening in February. And if the city hasn't, I don't think we've put anything out yet, but I know we're close to.
No,
putting that out.
we were able to secure a speaker from the Michigan Municipal League for February the 19th.
Okay, there you go. So stay tuned. You will get more information on that, but I did want to address that. As I've mentioned a couple times earlier, very unfortunate that in the matter of a month or a few weeks, we have had 2 accidents at with our crosswalks, our new crosswalks on Coolidge. The one was today, just before this meeting started. Luckily, at least as far as my latest update, nobody was killed. Could have been worse. And it, this is something that we've talked about, and I've spoken with public safety a number of times to figure out if there is a way to improve what those crosswalks actually are doing. Because, look, 2 people hit in the span of 6 weeks is way too many people to be hit. It does not make any sense to me, and it doesn't make any sense to public safety. And as of tonight, actually, those crosswalks, per the chief, at about 7:30, posts are being removed, and there will be barricades right now blocking those crosswalks, at least for the foreseeable future right now. Now, if we, again, move forward with what we saw today, 3 lanes may make those crosswalks then usable again, because you're not going to have that other lane of traffic and potential vehicles that kind of create that shadow effect that you can't see around. But I'm not going to allow somebody else to get hit and just say, oh, that happens. I mean, it's a learning experience for the drivers. It's a learning experience for those that are walking. Not only, you hit the button and you see the flashing, but you also still got to make sure. It just is not worth more kids or people, whoever, getting hurt. We heard from a couple of folks who spoke today about near misses as well in the crosswalk. So those are not operational right now. They're not going to be operational until something happens to allow them to be safe. The entire conversation about the Coolidge today is about safety. Yeah, there's a business development, don't get me wrong, and that is a part, but it's about making the road safer for everybody. Safer for cars, safer for residents, safer for, despite the bike lane conversation, multi-modes of transportation. We're trying to make Coolidge safer. That's the bottom line. And, we tried the crosswalks, in my estimation. I'm sure a lot of folks have crossed on them, crossed them multiple times, but people getting hit because of the same thing, that's not acceptable. That's not safe. I know we want to allow people to go to cross Coolidge. You're going to go to Wiltshire or go to Catalpa. It's not that far. I promise you, it's not that far. I would much rather have people crossing there than trying to cross anywhere else at this point. So that has happened. See it on your way home. Still have a couple minutes before we have to shut her down here. You know what? That's it. We've had a long meeting. We've talked about a lot of things. We had a lot of discussion today. Again, we have passionate residents in this city that are on both sides of issues, and I think it's important that we always remember that. I saw a lot of great conversation on social media on this. There's a lot of people who are passionate, bringing ideas, bringing studies, their opinions. You just got to remember that just because you feel strongly about something doesn't mean the person sitting across from you doesn't feel the complete opposite way, and that's fine. We can have opposing. We have disagreed on council. We had 4-3 votes on things. It happens. It's okay, but we need to move forward, and we're going to continue to move forward as a community. Please enjoy the holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. We'll see you guys in 2019. Have a safe, wonderful, prosperous new year. And with that, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Motion adjourned by Mayor Pro Tem, support by Councilmember Dean. Ms. Boucher, would you please call the roll?
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennon.
Yes.
Stedman.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. The December 17, 2018, last meeting of 2018 is adjourned.